that Tsundere goddess falls in love with me. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 476, A Drop of Blood. In the evening, Luchuan lay exhausted on the quilt. His lips were pale, his eyes were black, and he felt weak, as if he had been sucked too much of his essence by the female ghost. Unattainable lay on his chest contentedly, and said with a smile, although 1,000 years have passed, I'm still in your shape, and we are still so compatible. Do you feel it, Luchuan? Unattaitable's finger slid on Luchuan's body and said, the effect of the resurrection stone can still last for a while. Why not do it again? Luchuan shuddered immediately and looked at Unattaiable pleadingly. Let me go. Really, there is not a drop left. Unattainable snorted, got up and draped the white gauze on herself. Forget it. Since you have worked hard all day, I won't embarrass you. You should have a good rest tonight, and we will go to the magic cave tomorrow. After that, she got up and walked out of the cave. Luchuan was relieved. Although Unattainable's ecstatic look was indeed fascinating, she was a female ghost after all. Even if she used the resurrection stone, it would consume Luchuan's yang energy. If she came a few more times, he might lose his life. After resting for a while, he got up and put on his clothes. He took out a bottle of elixir from the demon suppression tower, poured out a handful of it, and stuffed it into his mouth. Then he circulated his spiritual power and began to recover. Although Unattainable's absorption of human essence was a bit scary, Luchuan was at least a Yuanying stage practitioner and had a Zhuanghuang immortal body, so these losses could be easily recovered. However, when he was circulating his spiritual energy, he was surprised to find that a drop of black liquid appeared in his dinshin. This black liquid exuded an endless evil aura. Luchuan just observed it for a while, and the evil thoughts in his heart were infinitely magnified. In these few seconds, he even had the urge to become a big devil who did all kinds of evil, and there was a tendency to fall into the devil's way. After realizing that something was wrong, he quickly stopped observing the drop of black liquid in his danshin, and a trace of fear rose in his heart. What is this? At this time, Unattainable returned to the cave, and at this time she once again possessed Zhanglinga's body. When Luchuan saw Unattainable coming in, he quickly asked, why is there a drop of black liquid in my danshin? Did you put it in my body? Unattainable was not surprised to hear this, but nodded and said, not bad. Luchuan asked, what is this? Unattainable said, you will know when you enter the magic cave. Anyway, it is something good for you. Luchuan was a little speechless and said, I just observed it and almost fell into the devil's way. You told me that this thing is good for me. This is not a means for you to keep it to control me, right? Unattainable shrugged and said, if you say it is, it is. Anyway, as long as you don't take the initiative to observe it, it will not have any effect on you. You'd better not try to get it out of your body, otherwise it may cost you your life. Luchuan looked at Unattainable's nonchalant look and suspected that this was the means she used to control herself. Maybe when he helped her solve the troubles in the magic cave, she would use this drop of black liquid to control herself. By then, she might tie me to her side for the rest of my life and use me as a tool for her sexual gratification. That kind of scenario is extremely terrifying just thinking about it. Luchuan looked at Unattainable helplessly and said, I trust you so much and promised to help you solve the trouble in the magic cave. You should have seen my performance along the way. I have never played any tricks on you. It's okay that you forced yourself on me, but now you leave such a dangerous thing in my body. You are too unreasonable. Unattainable got a little angry when she heard this and said, yes, I'm unreasonable. What's wrong? I just don't trust you. I want to leave some means in your body so that I can control you later. If you don't like it, you can leave now. I'm not forcing you to go to the magic cave with me. Then you let Linga go to me. Luchuan sighed and said, okay, can't I cooperate with you, but you must promise to get this thing out of my body after I help you solve the trouble. Unattainable glared at Luchuan, said nothing more, turned and walked out of the cave. Luchuan communicated with the tower spirit with his mind. Tower spirit, can you tell what this drop of black liquid in my danshin is? The tower spirit said, if I'm not mistaken, it should be a drop of blood. A drop of blood. Lu Chuan widened his eyes and felt a little incredible. This was the first time he saw black blood. What kind of blood is it? The tower spirit said, it should be the blood of a very powerful being. Although this drop of blood contains a very amazing evil power, it has to be admitted that its owner's realm has reached an unprecedented level. It should be an ancient powerful being with the power to destroy the world. Lu Chuan was very surprised and asked, then can you be sure which ancient powerful being it is? The tower spirit said, although the range is very small, it is still difficult to confirm who this drop of blood belongs to, and there are countless powerful beings born from ancient times to the present. Even I can't understand them all. This drop of blood may come from someone. Lu Chuan had to nod and asked again, then do you have a way to get this drop of blood out of my body? The tower spirit said, this drop of blood is of a very high status. I can expel it with the help of the demon tower, but once the power in this drop of blood is disturbed, you will be the first to be affected. According to my observation, this drop of blood will not have any effect on you. As long as you don't take the initiative to touch it, there shouldn't be much of a problem. Seeing that the tower spirit had no way, Lu Chuan had to give up, and could only hope that Sissy would keep her promise. Based on his understanding of Sissy, the other party should not use such means to harm people. The reason for doing so may be for other purposes. No matter what, let's solve the trouble in the demon cave first, and get the extremely yin water first. Lu Chuan muttered to himself. That night, Sissy did not come to Lu Chuan to sleep together. The next morning, Lu Chuan's condition returned to its peak, and together with Sissy, he continued to rush towards the place where the demon cave was. After a day of traveling, the two came to a gloomy and desolate canyon. There were no traces of animals or plants, and the sky was gloomy. From time to time, there were ghost-like howling sounds in their ears, which made people feel like they were in a cold hell. Sissy came to the entrance of a hidden cave, turned her head to look at Lu Chuan, and said, follow me closely. Then she walked into the cave. Lu Chuan hurriedly followed him in, but as soon as he entered, his eyes went dark. When he came to his senses, he saw Sissy holding a dagger and stabbing him in the throat. Chapter 477 Demonic Cave. Lu Chuan was shocked, and all the power in his body suddenly burst out, rushing straight towards Sissy. He didn't know why Sissy suddenly attacked, so he could only try his best to protect himself in this situation. However, at the moment, when he released his power, the scene in front of him suddenly changed. Sissy turned her back to him, and walked forward without looking back. Illusion. Lu Chuan immediately realized what was going on. There was some kind of power in this cave that could affect people's minds, making people have the illusion of being attacked by people around them, so that they would hurt the people around them. When he reacted, the power had already attacked Sissy and could not be taken back. Sissy also realized the danger. In the crisis, she actually broke away from Zhanglinger's body and blocked Lu Chuan's attack with her ghost body. There was a look of pain on her face, and her soul even had a tendency to collapse, but fortunately she finally resisted it, and then returned to Zhanglinger. Compared with before, her breath was obviously much weaker, and Lu Chuan's attack caused her a lot of damage. Lu Chuan rushed to Sissy with a full of self-blame and said, my mind was affected just now. I thought you were going to attack me, so I released my power in a hurry. I'm sorry. Sissy smiled and said, it's okay. The entrance to the magic cave has been polluted by the evil power for many years. It's normal for your mind to be affected. But you must remember that I will not hurt you under any circumstances. You must keep your mind and don't be affected. Lu Chuan nodded seriously and then asked with concern, how are you? Or should we recover from your injuries before going in? Just now, Sissy used her soul to resist the attack, obviously to protect Zhanglinger. Her action made Lu Chuan completely dispel his doubts about the other party, and even gave birth to a few touches. Sissy shook her head and said, I'm fine, let's go in, as soon as possible. This time you go in front. Lu Chuan nodded, walked in front of Sissy, and walked inside. After confirming that Lu Chuan couldn't see her, Sissy showed a painful look on her face and her body couldn't stop shaking. It was obvious that the blow just now caused her unimaginable damage. But she didn't intend to tell Lu Chuan. After all, it didn't matter whether she said it or not. The two walked along the cave for a long time, all the way down. The temperature around them kept dropping, and the yin energy became heavier and heavier. Even Luchuan had a creepy feeling. There was no light here, but you could see the surrounding environment clearly, because the strong yin evil power had reached the point where it could emit a faint light, but the light of these yin evil powers was also gloomy and chilling. After a long time, the two came to a cave. The area inside was very large, almost the size of an international airport. There were strange rocks and gusts of gloomy wind here, just like the 18 levels of hell, and there was a gloomy and terrifying atmosphere everywhere. In the center of the entire cave, there was a suspended stone slab, on which lay a beautiful female corpse. It was Usisi. Although thousands of years have passed, Usisi's body has not decayed, and remains in perfect condition, but it is pale all over, and lacks the yang energy of a living person. And above her body, a sword is hovering, and the sword releases a terrifying pressure, isolating the space around the body from the entire magic cave. It looks like it is suppressing the body, but it is actually protecting it. And the conical rock above the sword keeps oozing out glow liquid, dripping on the sword, flowing down the sword, and dripping from the tip of the sword to the center of Usisi's eyebrows. This is exactly what has tortured Usisi for thousands of years. Luchuan observed the glow liquid and showed a touch of excitement on his face. Although this liquid is still a certain distance away from the extremely yin water, the ice stone that produces these glow liquids can definitely produce extremely yin water that meets the requirements. But before he could be happy, a figure wrapped in a thick evil power rushed towards them. Usisi, you actually have the courage to come back. A hoarse and low voice sounded. Usisi suddenly became alert and turned to Luchuan and said, "This is the monster I told you about. It was transformed from the witchcraft master who sealed my body and absorbed the evil power in the magic cave after his death. For nearly 1,000 years, it has been absorbing the evil power in the magic cave. It is extremely powerful. You must be careful." Luchuan showed a trace of doubt on his face and asked, "The witchcraft master who sealed you? Why did he die here too?" Usisi explained, "He lied to me back then, saying that he would help me become a fierce ghost, so that I could keep my memory and live for 1,000 years. But until he killed me and wanted to refine me, I realized that he didn't want to help me at all. But because I was so beautiful, he wanted to refine me into his ghost servant and make me the furnace for him to practice the evil method of yin and yang. I was unwilling to give up, and I fought to the death to kill him. After his death, he turned into a monster in this magic cave and has been against me. Fortunately, I have the protection of the evil sword, and he can't get close to the area near the evil sword. I have survived for more than 1,000 years." Luchuan was surprised. He didn't expect that the master who helped Usisi become a 1,000-year-old ghost was actually a liar. But in this way, many other puzzles emerged in Luchuan's mind. For example, 1,000 years ago, when Usisi had just turned into a ghost, how did he fight to the death to kill the witchcraft master who had the means to refine ghost servants? He didn't have time to ask more questions, because the monster had already arrived in front of the two of them and released a dark evil force towards them. Luchuan raised his hand and released a flame formed by the sun's true fire, heading towards the evil force. The two collided, and the sun's true fire instantly burned all the evil forces clean. The monster was obviously a little surprised and whispered, "No wonder you dare to come back. It turns out you brought helpers. This kid doesn't look simple, but do you think he can get rid of me?" Usisi snorted coldly and shouted, "Ayo watching, you should have died 1,000 years ago. Now you are just a monster that is lingering on with the power of the magic cave. Evil monsters like you should not exist in the world. Today is your death." Ayo watching laughed and said, "Linging on. Speaking of which, I have to thank you. If you hadn't let me die in this place, I'm afraid I wouldn't have the power I have now in several lifetimes. Just give me some more time. I can completely ignore the deterrence of the sword of suppressing evil and get your body. At that time, whether it is your body or your ghost, it will become my plaything. I have waited for a full 1,000 years, and then I will definitely let you feel my passion and persistence for you." Usisi showed a trace of disgust on her face, and without further ado, she turned her head and said to Luchuan, "This guy's power has been increasing. If he continues like this, he may have the power to escape from the devil's cave. At that time, I'm afraid that the whole world will be devastated by him, so I brought you here to get rid of him. As long as you completely wipe him out, I will return Zonglinger to you." Lu Chuan nodded solemnly and said, "Don't worry, even if you don't mention it, I will never sit idly by when I encounter such evil things. Be careful, leave this guy to me." Yu Sisi nodded and said, "Be careful too." It's not that she doesn't want to help Lu Chuan, but the evil power of Ao Wacheng has a strong ability to pollute. For the past 1,000 years, she has been fighting against these pollutions to prevent herself from being eroded and losing her mind. If she joins the battle, she will easily be polluted by Ao Wacheng's evil power. Lu Chuan is different. He has the sun god fire, which can burn everything, and those evil powers can't get close to him at all. Moreover, she is seriously injured now. Even if she wants to help, she can't help. Instead, she will become a burden. Lu Chuan flew into the air and came to Ao Wacheng. Looking at this monster wrapped in the materialized yin and evil power, he said coldly, "You have been dead for 1,000 years, but you are still so wretched and vulgar. If you exist in this world, it will only dirty other people's eyes. Today I will enforce justice on behalf of heaven. You'd better reincarnate early." Ao Wacheng snorted coldly, "Just you? It just so happens that I need a slave to help me get some beautiful girls from the outside world. Since you take the initiative to deliver it to the door, don't blame me for being rude." The two of them fought fiercely in an instant. The yin and evil power collided with the sun's true fire, making the entire magic cave become electric and explosive. Lu Chuan relied on the sun's true fire to basically ignore Ao Wacheng's yin and evil power, but the opponent's yin and evil power seemed endless and continuous. If things go on like this, his strength will be exhausted sooner or later, while Ao Wacheng will still be full of energy. At that time, he will just be a lamb to be slaughtered. In order to get rid of the opponent as soon as possible, he condensed a fireball in his palm, integrated the essence of the sun god fire into it, and then hit Ao Wacheng. Ao Wacheng's whole body was instantly wrapped in the sun god fire, and the evil power in his body was burned out, revealing a dry skeleton, which should be the true appearance of Ao Wacheng at this moment. Seeing the evil power dissipate, Lu Chuan breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that he had successfully defeated Ao Wacheng. But what he didn't expect was that a large amount of evil power instantly gushed out from a black round bead object in Ao Wacheng's dry bones, causing Ao Wacheng to once again be wrapped in a rich evil power. Ao Wacheng laughed and said, "Boy, your flame is indeed quite powerful, but as long as I'm in this magic cave, I'm invincible. No matter how much you burn, you can't burn out my power. Just wait for me to exhaust you." Lu Chuan frowned. He didn't expect this guy to be so difficult to deal with, but soon, he thought of something, sneered, and said, "You are invincible here? I don't think so." Then a golden gourd appeared in his hand. Ao Wacheng didn't know what Lu Chuan wanted to do, so he became more alert, but he was not too worried. Although he just said that he was invincible in the magic cave, it was not bragging, because there was a magic core in his body that had been nurtured for 1,000 years. This magic core has been absorbing the power in the magic cave for a whole 1,000 years. The power contained in it is enough to revive Ao Wacheng 1,000 times and 10,000 times. As long as the magic core is still there, he can always be invincible. Lu Chuan wanted to defeat him unless he destroyed his magic core, but if he wanted to get close to his magic core, he would have to be contaminated by the evil power. By then, even if Lu Chuan had the true fire of the sun, he would not be able to get rid of the damage caused by the pollution, and in the end, only Lu Chuan himself would die. He looked at Lu Chuan confidently and said lightly, "Boy, don't waste your energy. No matter what means you use, you can't defeat me." "Really?" Lu Chuan did not hesitate, and aimed the golden gourd in his hand at Ao Wacheng, and then launched the means of stealing. In the blink of an eye, Lu Chuan's breath was sluggish to the extreme. This was the price he had to pay for using the thief's gourd. But in front of him, a black bead emitting evil power appeared at this moment, which was the one in Ao Wacheng's body. Chapter 478, Because I Deceived You. If I destroy this thing, can I defeat you? Lu Chuan looked at the black bead, felt the terrifying evil power contained in it, and did not dare to touch it directly. If I guessed correctly, this bead was the reason why Ao Wacheng was so confident. Ao Watching was still in a state of complacency. After hearing Lu Chuan's words, he raised his eyes and looked at Lu Chuan. When he saw that his magic core had run to Lu Chuan at some point, he was shocked, and the evil power around him became disordered. He quickly sensed his body and found that the magic core had indeed disappeared. His voice became a little sharp. My magic core? How could you take my magic core away quietly? This is impossible. Lu Chuan grinned and said, it seems that you really rely on this thing to be so confident. In this case, I will destroy it now. No. Ao Watching rushed towards Lu Chuan at a high speed to stop Lu Chuan from destroying the magic core. But how could Lu Chuan give him a chance? He raised his hand and released the true fire of the sun, igniting the magic core. The magic core instantly ignited a raging flame, and then it exploded directly. The shock wave directly knocked Lu Chuan and Ao Watching out. Sisi on the ground stared at the explosion in the air in amazement, and then quickly found a place to hide. She knew the magic core in Ao Watching's body, and she also knew that it was formed by Ao Watching absorbing the evil spirit in the magic cave for a full 1,000 years. Or 1,000 years of accumulation has indeed reached an extremely terrifying level, and the magic core can also get some bonuses in the magic cave. It is not a problem for Ao Watching to say that he is invincible in the magic cave. The magic core is the core of Ao Watching, and it must be protected by layers. Under normal circumstances, only by destroying Ao Watching's body first can there be a chance to destroy the magic core. She thought Lu Chuan would definitely deal with Ao Watching according to this idea, so she did not tell Lu Chuan about the magic core in advance. But who would have thought that Lu Chuan actually stole the magic core from Ao Watching's body through the air? No matter who it was, their heads would definitely be buzzing. The explosion lasted for a long time, but the magic cave was also a special existence, and was not affected too much by the explosion. Lu Chuan relied on the remaining strength in his body to resist the shock wave of the explosion, and then looked in the direction of Ao Watching. After the magic core exploded, the evil power around Ao Watching also burned. He let out a shrill scream. Although his face could not be seen, looking at the evil power burning in his facial features, he could also feel the twisted pain he endured. As the explosion slowly dissipated, the flames on Ao Watching's body slowly disappeared, and finally turned into a black corpse, falling to the ground, falling into pieces, already dead and could not die anymore. Lu Chuan was still a little worried, so he flew over carefully, and then released a ray of sunfire, which completely burned Ao Watching's corpse, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. Although this battle looks simple, it is still very tiring for Lu Chuan. Just using the Thief's Good to steal Ao Watching's magic core almost drained all his energy, leaving him in a weak state. If this method fails to get rid of Ao Watching, then he will only be killed. After confirming that Ao Watching has been completely dealt with, Lu Chuan returned to where Sisi was. Sisi hurried over and asked with concern, "How are you? Are you injured?" Lu Chuan smiled and said, "It's okay, I just need to recover first." Sisi nodded quickly and said, "Then you recover first. There is only this one monster in this magic cave that poses a threat. After getting rid of him, there will be no other troubles. You don't have to worry about other dangers." Lu Chuan nodded, then took out a bottle of pills, ate it, sat cross-legged on the ground, and began to recover. Sisi sat beside him, propped her chin with her hand, and stared at him with her head tilted. She didn't know what she remembered, but she laughed foolishly. But after a while, tears started to fall again. After a long time, Lu Chuan recovered temporarily. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Sisi's tearful appearance and was stunned. "Why are you crying?" Sisi quickly wiped her tears and said, "I remembered some past events, and I miss them a little bit. Is that not okay?" Lu Chuan smiled and said, "Miss Sisi, I have to talk about you now. No matter how beautiful the memories of the past are, we still have to look forward. You see, the monsters in this magic cave have been solved. I will help you solve the troubles that have troubled you for thousands of years. By then, you will not only no longer be troubled by those cold waters, but you will also be able to regain your freedom. Everything will develop in a better direction, and you will experience better things in the future." When Sisi heard this, she smiled bitterly and muttered softly, "But I have no future anymore." Lu Chuan didn't hear clearly and asked, "What did you say?" Sissy smiled and said, nothing. Lu Chuan didn't care and asked, by the way, you said before that Aowachan wanted to refine you into his ghost servant, but you killed him in the end, which made him become the monster in this magic cave. At that time, you should have just turned into your ghost. How did you kill Aowachan? Sissy heard this and explained, because of the drop of blood I sent into your body. Lu Chuan was slightly surprised. That drop of blood. Sissy nodded. Yes, when I was about to be refined by Aowachan, perhaps it was because of my unwillingness that caused the changes in the magic cave, or perhaps it was because some lingering emotions in my heart touched the remaining consciousness of the terrifying existence in the magic cave. This drop of blood appeared in front of me at that time and merged into my soul, allowing me to gain unique power, which allowed me to kill Aowachan. After that, some information appeared in my mind, and I learned that this drop of blood came from a terrifying existence who called himself the Demon Lord. This magic cave was a place where he practiced in the past, and this drop of blood was left here at that time. And according to the information that appeared in my mind, we can know that this drop of blood is the medium left by the Demon Lord to find the successor. Once recognized by this drop of blood, there will be a chance to obtain the Demon Lord's inheritance. Although this drop of blood helped me when I was most desperate, I did not get its recognition. It is likely that I have the potential to obtain the Demon Lord's inheritance in some aspects, but it is not enough. However, it is gratifying that over the past 1,000 years, whenever I was in desperate situation, it would burst out with terrifying power to help me get out of trouble. So I have always regarded this drop of blood as my ultimate means of saving my life. When Lu Chuan heard this, a look of surprise appeared on his face, and he said, so you put this drop of blood into my body because you are worried that I can't defeat this Aowachan so that it can save my life. Sissy suddenly showed a playful smile on her face and said, what else? Do I want to rely on this drop of blood to control you so that I can command you forever? When Lu Chuan heard this, he was immediately embarrassed. He never thought that Sissy gave him this drop of blood to protect him, but he suspected that Sissy had ulterior motives and wanted to control him with this drop of blood. This made him feel ashamed. Yes, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you before, Lu Chuan said, scratching his head. Sissy snorted and said, I will never have any intention to harm you. Lu Chuan hurriedly said, then I will return this drop of blood to you now. Sissy was silent for a while after hearing this, and then said, no need, I don't need it anymore. You keep it, just in case you can get its recognition. Then you will have the opportunity to get the inheritance left by the Demon Lord. Lu Chuan was slightly puzzled. No need? Why? Sissy didn't want to explain and urged, oh, why are there so many whys? You still have to help me get rid of the pain of the dripping water of the evil sword. Go and take the ice stone away. Lu Chuan heard this and remembered that he had more important things to do, so he nodded, stood up and flew into the air. At this moment, Sissy also broke away from Zhanglinga's body and flew towards the stone slab hovering in the air. She landed beside her own corpse, looking at her corpse that had been dead for 1,000 years and had long lost any vitality. She sighed helplessly and murmured, after all, I have waited for this day. Then her soul merged into the corpse. After a while, the beautiful corpse actually made some movements and opened its eyes. Lu Chuan came to the top of the magic cave and saw the conical rock that was dripping water to the evil suppressing sword below. Then he released his spiritual consciousness and penetrated into the rock. After a while, he found the whereabouts of the ice stone. He used his spiritual energy as a blade to cut the rock and saw the ice stone hidden in it at a glance. The ice stone was ice blue all over and it exuded a strong cold air. Lu Chuan just got closer and felt that his blood was about to be frozen. This is almost the perfect material for refining the extremely yin water. He showed a touch of excitement on his face and immediately wrapped the ice stone with spiritual power and took it out of the rock. However, just as he was excitedly observing the ice stone, the evil suppressing sword hovering below suddenly shook violently and made a sharp sword sound, as if expressing painful emotions. Very violent. Lu Chuan frowned immediately and looked at the evil suppressing sword. The next second, the evil suppressing sword seemed to have reached the limit of what it could bear. It shattered with a bang and broke into pieces. On the stone slab below, Sissy, who had merged with the corpse, also screamed in pain. Her body kept twisting, and she could even hear the sound of bones breaking. Luchuan realized that something was wrong and rushed to the stone slab. He helped Sissy up and asked anxiously, "What's going on? Why did the evil suppressing sword shatter as soon as I took off the ice stone? And you are also in so much pain?" Sissy forced a smile on her face, gently stroked Luchuan's face with her hand, and said, "Silly boy, because you were deceived by me." Chapter 479 I will always remember you. Luchuan suddenly became anxious, looking at Sissy and asked, "What do you mean? Why did you lie to me?" Sissy looked at Luchuan and said, "For more than 1,000 years, the ice stone has indeed brought me endless pain. But what I didn't tell you is that the ice stone is also the source of my existence for more than 1,000 years. It forms a hole with the sort of suppression of evil in my body. Only by relying on the water drops produced by the ice stone falling on my body can my ghost last forever. This is exactly the formation that Aowachun set up specifically for me. Only if the formation lasts forever can I continue to exist. In order to control me, Aowachun injected a lot of torturous powers into the formation to influence my mind and turned me into a ghost servant who obeyed his orders. Later, affected by the drop of blood of the demon lord, Aowachun lost control of the formation and could not even get close to the area of the formation, but the characteristics of the formation still exist. For the past 1,000 years, I have been tortured by this formation, and now I can finally be free." Luchuan said anxiously, "Even so, you don't have to do this. I can definitely find a way to let you live forever in the world and get rid of the pain." Sissy smiled and said, "It's useless. I have merged with this formation. As long as the formation is there, I will be there, but the pain will also be there. Only when the formation disappears, the pain will disappear." Luchuan frowned and said, "Then I can find a way to relieve your pain." Sissy smiled bitterly, then raised her hand and gently tapped Luchuan's forehead. Luchuan instantly felt that his mind was filled with all kinds of noisy voices, almost bursting his head, and mixed with all kinds of evil thoughts, constantly washing his reason, and almost made him mentally collapse and fall into the devil's way several times. Fortunately, this pain only lasted for a moment and disappeared. Otherwise he was really not sure if he could still bear it. He was soaked in cold sweat, panting as he looked at Sissy and asked, "This is Sissy, this is the pain I suffered, and I just passed this feeling to you." Luchuan's expression froze, and his eyes looking at Sissy suddenly became much more complicated. Just for a moment, he felt that he was about to collapse from the pain, and Sissy endured this pain for a whole 1,000 years. He really couldn't figure out what kind of perseverance could allow a person to persist to this extent. Under such pain, whether it is a person or a ghost, it is easy to be defeated by those evil thoughts and completely degenerate. But Sissy was able to stay awake for 1,000 years. Such an amazing idea is difficult to achieve even for practitioners. No wonder the blood left by the demon lord chose her. Sissy looked at Luchuan's surprised expression, reached out and touched his face again, and said, "Do you remember what you said before? That I would rather turn into a fierce ghost and not reincarnate, but find the reincarnation of Tsundere for revenge. Did I admit it? In fact, I lied to you. Hatred can certainly make a person obsessed, but no matter how deep the hatred is, it will gradually fade with the passage of time. What's more, I have waited for a whole 1,000 years, and the hatred towards Tsundere in my heart has long been negligible. The reason why I found Aowachun, even if I turned into a fierce ghost, I wanted to keep my memory and be able to live forever in the world. The real purpose is to be able to see you again." As she spoke, she began to cry, and her hand touching Luchuan began to tremble. It can be clearly seen that her body is turning into bits of light and gradually dissipating. From the beginning, I never thought about seeking revenge on Tsundere. I just hope that I can see you again. I have never changed this idea in the past 1,000 years. I can always stay rational in such pain because of this belief. I don't want to see you become a monster like Aowachun when I see you again." Hearing this, Luchuan couldn't help but feel endless heartache for Sissy. Although he had no memory of his previous life, it was obvious that Sissy's efforts had touched him. He felt more and more that he was a beast in his previous life. Why did he have the heart to abandon such a good woman? But haven't you seen me now? Why do you want to end your life again? Didn't you wait in vain for the past 1,000 years? Lu Chuan asked puzzledly. Yu Sisi laughed and said, because I think what you said is very right. Although you are the reincarnation of Lu Jingxing, you are not Lu Jingxing after all. The Lu Jingxing that I love deeply died 1,000 years ago. After all, there is still a difference between you and him. But I'm very satisfied to be able to see you. Whether you still remember me or not, my wish has been fulfilled, and you have given me a very happy experience. My 1,000 years of waiting are worth it. At this point, her face showed a painful look again, and the speed of her body dissipating also increased a lot. Lu Chuan looked at her like this, and felt very distressed, but he was helpless. He had just observed secretly that Yu Sisi and the formation had indeed merged into one. The formation was destroyed, and even the gods could not save Yu Sisi. Lu Chuan, can you hug me one last time? Yu Sisi looked at Lu Chuan pleadingly. Lu Chuan sighed, hugged Yu Sisi into his arms, and whispered, I'm sorry. Yu Sisi hugged him with both hands, smiled and said, silly, you have nothing to be sorry for me. The one who is sorry for me is that bastard Lu Jingxing. But I will be able to meet him soon, so you don't have to be too sad for me. Lu Chuan felt even more depressed when he heard this. The formation was destroyed, and Yu Sisi would completely dissipate, and she would not even have the chance to reincarnate. Lu Jingxing had already reincarnated into herself. In Yu Sisi's heart, Lu Jingxing was already dead. Perhaps she felt that the two completely disappeared. Beings could meet again in another time and space that ordinary people could not understand. I will always remember you, Lu Chuan said seriously. Yu Sisi burst out laughing, then leaned close to Lu Chuan's ear and said jokingly, you must find a few more girlfriends, preferably 8 or 10 of them. I couldn't have you alone in the last life, and neither can the reincarnation of Zhang Shusi in this life. I also want to see her fighting with other women for you. Although it was a joke, Lu Chuan couldn't laugh at all after hearing it. I'm leaving, you must be well. If you have a chance, don't let other girls wait for you for 1,000 years. It's really hard to bear. Yu Sisi's tears poured down, all turned into starlight, and dissipated in the air. Her body also became almost transparent, turning into stars. Among these starlights, Lu Chuan saw the scene of Lu Jingxing and Yu Sisi getting married, the scene of the two of them kissing, the scene of Yu Sisi cooking for Lu Jingxing massaging Yu Sisi's back, and the scene of the two sitting together under the starry sky, shaking their feet, and saying that they would be together forever. As these scenes unfolded, Yu Sisi completely disappeared in Lu Chuan's arms. When everything calmed down, Lu Chuan was already in tears, unable to calm down for a long time. He sat on the stone slab for a whole day before he sorted out his mood, got up and flew down to the ground. This may be a relief for her. Without thinking anymore, Lu Chuan hurried to where Zhang Linga was, picked her up from the ground, and saw that the girl had become extremely weak after being left out for a day because of the loss of Yu Sisi's possession, and he immediately felt a sense of self-blame. I forgot that you are still a mortal body. I'm really sorry, but in the last life, I left Yu Sisi for you. In this life, I left you out for a day for her. You should have no objection, right? Without hesitation, Lu Chuan immediately carried Zhang Linga and left the magic cave. This place was full of evil power, and it would not be good for the body to stay there for a long time. Shortly after the two left, an ancient and long sigh, as if traveling through time and space, rang out throughout the magic cave. In the forest, Lu Chuan placed Zhang Linga on a large rock, fed her a few pills, and transferred some spiritual power into her body to help her recover. After a long time, Zhang Linga slowly opened her eyes, and after seeing the surrounding environment clearly, she showed a confused expression and murmured, "Where am I?" Lu Chuan smiled and said, "We are now at the edge of the mountains. If we walk a few dozen kilometers further, we can see the city." Zhang Linga stared at Lu Chuan for a few seconds before she remembered that a scary female ghost had come to her and said that she had robbed her man, and then she lost consciousness. She quickly threw herself into Lu Chuan's arms and asked fearfully, "Then, where is that female ghost?" Lu Chuan said, "Don't be afraid, she has already left." Zhang Linga was relieved and said happily, "I knew you wouldn't let anything happen to me." By the way, why did that female ghost come to me? Why did she say that I stole her man? When Lu Chuan heard this question, he couldn't help but sigh. After thinking for a while, he decided to talk about the grievances between her and Yu Sissy in their previous lives. Zhang Linga listened to Lu Chuan's story. Her eyes gradually widened, revealing a strong expression of disbelief. After listening to Lu Chuan's story, she was first full of emotion, then became a little melancholy, and finally looked up at Lu Chuan with a look of disgust. Seeing Zhang Linga's eyes, Lu Chuan asked, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Zhang Linga said indignantly, "I never thought that I was so entangled with you in my previous life. I must have lost my mind to fall into your hands in both lives." Lu Chuan was speechless and said, "Even if you really lost your mind to like me, you can't leave me now." Zhang Linga snorted and said, "You are just lucky. Don't think that I can't live without you. I'm not as stupid as you, sissy." Lu Chuan smiled and said, "Okay, in this case, let's say goodbye. I wish you a happy life in the future." After that, he pretended to leave. Seeing this, Zhang Linga quickly hugged his arm and shouted, "You dare. I was just joking just now." Lu Chuan looked at Zhang Linga, who was controlled by him and couldn't help but reveal a playful smile. Seeing him laughing at her, Zhang Linga pinched him angrily and said, "What are you laughing at? I'm just afraid that you will leave me alone in this wilderness, so I won't let you go. It's not because I can't leave you. When we return to Jiangbi, I will kick you out and find other little brothers." Lu Chuan said, "That's perfect. I'll just go find Kingxi and don't have to find other little sisters." Zhang Linga was immediately angry again. She couldn't understand why she was so passive. Logically, shouldn't the initiative be in her hands? She looked at Lu Chuan with resentment, thinking that this guy was really hateful. No wonder she fell into his hands for both of her lives. This guy's really too resourceful. At this moment, she suddenly remembered something and suddenly squinted her eyes and looked at Lu Chuan, saying, "I seem to remember that when I was possessed, you disliked my small breasts, and you sissy even let me hear this. You dare to dislike me." When Lu Chuan heard this, the pride on his face disappeared instantly and turned into a touch of embarrassment and said, "How could it be? Big has its advantages and small has its own taste. How could I dislike it?" Zhang Linga was immediately furious and yelled at Lu Chuan, "So you really think my breasts are small, right?" Lu Chuan swallowed his saliva and said with a stiff face, "No, no." Zhang Linga gritted her teeth in anger, pinched Lu Chuan's flesh with her hands, and shouted, "No? You really don't even blush when you tell lies. What's the good of having such big breasts? Aren't they a burden? Why don't you like something else and like this, you wretched, obscene, perverted man?" Lu Chuan cried out in pain, saying, "Auntie, I was wrong, can't I? Please forgive me, you are almost pinching my flesh off." Zhang Linga was relentless and took the opportunity to severely list the shortcomings of women with big breasts, saying that they are all vixens, shameless, and can only seduce men. She said that they are the embodiment of lust, will make men bad, will disrupt social order, and cause disgust from other women. Lu Chuan did not dare to refute and could only nod and say, "Yes, yes, yes, you are right." Zhang Linga looked at Lu Chuan angrily, then stretched out her hand and said confidently, "Then do you have any elixir that can make breasts bigger? Give me some. I will bear the accusations of the world for everyone." Lu Chuan. Just as the two were playing, 3 terrifying pressures suddenly descended into the woods. Lu Chuan frowned instantly, and the whole person became extremely alert, protecting Zhang Linga behind him. He could sense that the 3 auras that suddenly appeared all came from cultivators, and each of them was much stronger than his. Soon, 3 figures appeared in midair, looking down at Lu Chuan and Zhang Linga on the ground, as if they were looking at 2 ants. These 3 people were none other than the 3 most powerful men in Penglai Mortal Realm who had been tracking Lu Chuan all the way: Tan Lang, Piao Jun, and Keisha. Chapter 480, Hunting in Penglai Fairyland. Lu Chuan stared at the 3 people in the air and felt that they were all at the level of the 7th grade nascent soul. His heart sank and he had a bad premonition. Then he asked, 3 seniors, why are you here? Tan Lang, Piao Jun, and Keisha all looked down at Lu Chuan with indifference. Tan Lang, the leader, said coldly, the 3 of us are from Penglai Mortal Realm. We came here to take you back. Lu Chuan, you have killed 3 practitioners from Penglai Mortal Realm in succession. This is an unforgivable crime. You'd better surrender and go back with the 3 of us. Otherwise, the 3 of us have the right to kill you directly without any mercy. Lu Chuan frowned. He never expected that these 3 people were from Penglai Mortal Realm. But thinking about it carefully, it seems that only Penglai Mortal Realm can send 3 powerful practitioners at a time on the earth today. The most important thing is that Lu Chuan's current enemies are the Kunlun Domain Lu family and Penglai Mortal Realm, and at most one more medicine sect, so no one from other forces will come to trouble him. He thought for a moment and said, "Senior, please don't slander me. When did I kill 3 practitioners from your Penglai Mortal Realm?" Tanlang said coldly, "Tu Yaoming, Taoist Yushin, and Dan Yangzi, all 3 of them died at your hands. What else do you have to quibble about?" Lu Chuan was stunned for a moment and asked, "Is Tu Yaoming also from your Penglai Mortal Realm?" The reason why he asked that just now was because he couldn't figure out when he killed 3 people from Penglai Mortal Realm. No matter how he counted, there were only Taoist Yushin and Dan Yangzi. Now he realized that Tu Yaoming was also from Penglai Mortal Realm. Now all the practitioners in this world belong to my Penglai Mortal Realm, and Tu Yaoming is no exception. Tanlang said lightly. Lu Chuan immediately curled his lips and said, "It seems that there is really nothing good in your Penglai Mortal Realm." "What did you say?" Pio Jun next to Tanlang looked at Lu Chuan angrily, and the pressure on his body was a little more fierce. Lu Chuan smiled and said, "3 seniors, please calm down. I was just complaining. These 3 people were indeed killed by me, but I had no choice. Each of them wanted to kill me. In order to save my life, I had to kill them to ensure my own safety. You are all cultivators, and should understand the law of the jungle in the cultivation world. They came to kill me, and I had no complaints. They were killed by me, and that was what they deserved. I had no intention of going against your Penglai Fairyland. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame the 3 of them for being too greedy and putting their lives at risk." Keisha, who had a hot temper, snorted coldly and shouted, "Boy, stop talking nonsense here. The cultivators of my Penglai Fairyland are the top existences in the world. No matter what the reason is, you are not qualified to kill them." Lu Chuan frowned immediately, looked at Keisha, and asked in return, "So when I meet someone from your Penglai Fairyland, I can only wait for them to kill me? Is this rule set by your Penglai Fairyland?" Seeing that Lu Chuan dared to talk to him in this manner, Keisha's pressure also increased, and he was ready to take action. "Little bastard, who gave you the courage to talk to me like this? I think you want to die in my hands now." Seeing this, Tanlang quickly stopped Keisha and signaled him not to be impulsive. Then he looked at Lu Chuan and said, "The law of the jungle you mentioned is indeed correct, but now is the end of the Dharma era. If a cultivator dies, there will be one less. It is not easy for all the cultivators in my Penglai Fairyland to gather together. Naturally, we cannot tolerate outsiders killing members easily, and the 3 of them have the idea of killing you, so there must be something extraordinary about you. Maybe you are carrying a treasure, or you are gifted and have some secrets that can bring benefits to cultivators. No matter what the reason is, you must go back with us and atone for the mistakes you made. If you can bring enough value to our Penglai Fairyland, we can spare your life. Otherwise, we can only execute you and take your life to comfort the souls of the 3 of them in heaven." After hearing what Tanlang said, Lu Chuan couldn't help but burst into laughter and said, "You Penglai Immortal Realm are really shameless. With your faces, how can you be called the Immortal Realm? I also tell you clearly that I have done nothing wrong, and I don't think I'm guilty, let alone going back with you." Tanlang narrowed his eyes. "Do you think you can defeat the 3 of us together?" Lu Chuan raised the corner of his mouth and said, "I really can't beat you 3, but if I can't beat you, can't I run away?" As soon as he finished speaking, he quickly flashed in front of Zonglinger, then picked her up and flew into the sky, fleeing away. Keisha and Pio Jun couldn't help but snorted when they saw this, and there was a trace of murderous intent in their eyes. "We shouldn't talk to this kid calmly, we should just take action. I must cut this kid into pieces." Tanlang ignored the 2 and just shouted coldly, "Chase." Then he soared into the sky and quickly chased in the direction where Lu Chuan fled. Pio Jun and Keisha did not hesitate and followed him directly. Lu Chuan took Zhang to fly at a high speed, observing the situation behind him from time to time. Although he was very tough when he spoke just now, he was actually a little panicked in his heart. After all, the opponent was 3 7th grade Yuanying realm masters. Any one of them could beat him, not to mention the 3 of them joining forces. If they really fought, he would have no chance of winning, so he could only choose to escape with Zhang. But seeing the 3 people chasing him closely, it would be a difficult task to escape successfully. Zhang was still in shock at this time. She had no idea that Lu Chuan could fly. It was surprising enough to see those 3 guys who appeared out of nowhere floating in the air. What she didn't expect was that Lu Chuan could fly. She finally recovered and asked worriedly, "Will we be okay? Those 3 guys look very powerful." Lu Chuan smiled and said, "I don't know either. Do you think we can escape this?" Zhang eyes suddenly became firm. "Yes, I believe you." Lu Chuan sighed when he heard that. "You believe me, but I don't believe I can defeat the 3 7th grade Yuanying masters." But he still said to Zhang, "With what you said, I will ensure that you are safe." The 2 fled far into the mountains, and the 3 Tanlangs chased after them. "This damn kid is only a 4th grade Yuanying, but why is his flying speed so fast that the 3 of us can't catch up with him?" Kisha cursed. Tanlang said calmly, "He can't escape. It's hard for us to catch up with him, but it's also hard for him to get rid of us." Lu Chuan frowned as he looked at the 3 people who had been following him. The reason why he was not caught up was that his nascent soul was far superior to that of ordinary practitioners, but this could only make up for part of the gap between him and the 7th rank nascent soul master. If the 3 people from Penglai Fairyland kept chasing him, he would be caught up sooner or later. Considering that it was not a solution to escape like this, Lu Chuan released his spiritual sense, observed the terrain ahead, and then quickly got into the dense forest. After several shuttles, he came to a huge rock and put Zhang down. He looked at Zhang seriously and said, "Wait for me here, I'll go and take care of those 3 guys." Zhang looked at Lu Chuan with a worried look on her face and said, "Are you sure you can beat them?" Lu Chuan smiled and touched her head and said, "Believe me. Remember, no matter what happens outside, don't come out. Their target is only me. Even if they are shameless, they shouldn't hurt an innocent girl like you." Zhang had no choice but to nod and chose to believe Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan left from behind the stone and headed towards the 3 people from Penglai Fairyland. If he only relied on his own strength, Lu Chuan would not be able to defeat the 3 strong men from Penglai Fairyland. But if he used all his trump cards, he would have a chance. Although the possibility of success is very low, in order not to be taken back to Penglai Fairyland by these 3 people, he could only take a risk. The 3 Tanlangs didn't expect Lu Chuan to give up escaping, but rushed towards them instead, and they all became alert. "Boy, why don't you run away? Or do you want to play some tricks on us? Let me tell you, your tricks are not good enough in front of the 3 of us." Kisha shouted at Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan stopped in front of the 3 people, put his hands together, and said, "Free. I won't run away. I surrender. I promise to go back to Penglai Fairyland with you." When Tanlang heard Lu Chuan's words, he frowned and asked suspiciously, "You were not very tough at that time. Why do you suddenly surrender now? Are you trying to play some tricks on us?" Lu Chuan hurriedly explained, "I just found that I can't get rid of you at all. If I continue to run away, I will eventually be caught by you, so I gave up the idea of continuing to run away. And as long as you let go of the girl who is with me, I agree to go back with you. This is my only request." Hearing the conditions proposed by Lu Chuan, Tanlang and the other 2 felt that what Lu Chuan said did not seem to be false. After all, no matter from which perspective, Lu Chuan did not have any chance of escape. Podgen snorted coldly and said, "You are smart, kid. Everyone in my Penglai mortal realm is a gentleman and will never attack any innocent person. As long as you go back with us, we can ensure that the girl is safe and sound." Lu Chuan nodded. "That's good." Tanlang stared at Lu Chuan and said, "We are not sure whether you are lying to us, so before taking you back, we have to seal your dungeon first. You stand there and don't move or resist. I will release a force to seal your dungeon." "Okay." Lu Chuan agreed, but he did not stand still obediently. Instead, when Tanlang and the other 2 relaxed their vigilance, He threw something towards them with all his strength. A stream of light flew past and instantly arrived in front of Tanlang and the other two. The three quickly reacted and caught Lu Chuan's touch. It was a jade pendant that looked ordinary. It was the one left by Lu Chuan's mother. Lu Chuan did not hesitate at all. After the jade pendant arrived in front of the three people, he immediately formed a seal with both hands and triggered the formation contained in it. Chapter 481. My friend dies, but I live. The terrifying power fluctuations instantly enveloped Tanlang and the other two. Endless murderous intent enveloped the three of them. Even though they were powerful warriors of the 7th grade nascent soul realm, they felt a sense of palpitation at this moment. They all had a premonition in their hearts that, if they could not avoid the power erupting from the jade pendant, they would be instantly reduced to ashes, and even the nascent soul realm would have no chance of escape. This is a peerless killing formation that only existed in ancient times. Why does this kid have such a thing? Pio-jun exclaimed. Kisha looked solemn and shouted, run away. Otherwise, the three of us will die. After saying that, he gave Tanlang a look with a flash of determination in his eyes, and then released all his strength to push Pio-jun to the front of the jade pendant. Pio-jun was planning to escape quickly, but was caught off guard by Kisha. He was really unable to react and yelled, fuck you. We are brothers on weekdays, but you treat me like this at this time. Kisha said without any guilt, you also know that this is a peerless killing formation. If the three of us run away, we can't resist its power at all. Then the three of us will die. But if someone can resist the power of this peerless killing formation, the other two can survive. This is better than the three of us dying here. Pio-jun gritted his teeth and said, why should that person be me? Kisha said, it's better to let your friend die than to let me die. Pio-jun, we will be grateful to you. The conversation between the two was in a flash. Kisha didn't hesitate at all. After pushing Pio-jun to the jade pendant, he fled away quickly. As for Tanlang, he had already escaped when Kisha took action. Pio-jun was extremely angry, but at this moment he had no chance of escaping. By the time he reacted, the peerless killing array in the jade pendant had already erupted. An extremely terrifying beam of power rushed towards his body, piercing through him directly, making him lose his ability to move. The beam of light washed over his flesh, blood, and soul, causing him to scream in agony. However, in just a few seconds, the flesh and blood of Pio-jun, who was at the 7th grade nascent soul realm, was washed away, leaving only white bones. These bones did not last long, and were annihilated in an instant, followed by his nascent soul. However, in just a few breaths, Pio-jun completely dissipated between the world. Because he had withstood most of the power of the peerless killing array, the beams of light no longer posed a fatal threat when they reached Tanlang and Kisha, and the two easily resisted them. It happened so fast. From Lu Chuan's perspective, he only saw the jade pendant fly in front of Tanlang and the other two. Tanlang fled quickly, while Kisha suddenly pushed Pio-jun in front of the jade pendant, and then fled quickly. The next second, the light column penetrated Pio-jun and washed him clean. He originally thought that he had a chance to deal with all three people with the formation in the jade pendant, but he didn't expect that the people of Penglai Fairyland would betray their own people without any hesitation. They actually relied on sacrificing one person to resist the killing move of the jade pendant. Soon, the light column disappeared, and the jade pendant suspended in the air also reached its limit, turned into powder, and dissipated in the air. This life-saving jade pendant is disposable, and will dissipate after being used once. Tanlang and Kisha both breathed a sigh of relief, flew back again, and stared at the place where Pio-jun dissipated. They didn't have any emotional fluctuations, as if Pio-jun's death was just a sparse and ordinary thing, and it couldn't cause their reaction. After all, they are all old monsters who have lived for hundreds of years. They have already understood human nature thoroughly. Living in this world, as long as they are fine, no matter who dies, it has nothing to do with them. The two looked at Lu Chuan together. Tanlang said coldly, you really have a secret. You can even use this kind of peerless killing formation. But this should be your most powerful trump card, right? I don't believe you have any means to deal with the two of us working together. Lu Chuan frowned and looked at Tanlang and Kisha and said in a cold voice, I didn't expect that you people in Penglai Fairyland would not take your companions' lives seriously. You betray them just by saying so. Since you don't value the lives of your companions at all, why bother me for the death of those 3 guys? Kisha cursed. You know shit. We just tried to minimize the losses to the greatest extent. You killed 3 of our fellow disciples. This is a challenge to the majesty of our Penglay fairyland, and must be punished. Lu Chuan was speechless. He thought to himself that you guys really took shamelessness to the extreme. It was really unlucky for that guy to become your fellow disciple. He did not show any panic, but said to the 2 people, "Are you so sure that I don't have any other trump cards?" Tanlang narrowed his eyes, stared at Lu Chuan carefully for a few times, and said, "The peerless killing formation just now was unique even in ancient times. I don't believe you can have such a terrifying trump card, and you don't have to bluff us. Surrendering is your only choice, otherwise don't blame us for being rude." Lu Chuan curled his lips and said, "If you don't believe it, you can try." Kisha looked at Lu Chuan's confident look and began to wonder in his heart. He turned his head to look at Tanlang next to him and said, "Could this kid really have another trump card?" Tanlang said, "Don't be scared by his bluffing, but if he really has so many powerful trump cards, he wouldn't have to run away at that time." Kisha nodded, thinking that what Tanlang said made sense, and then he was ready to attack Lu Chuan. At this moment, Lu Chuan was just communicating with the tower spirit with his mind. Tower spirit, you promised me before that you would help me once in a critical moment. Does it still count? The tower spirit said, "Of course." Lu Chuan hurriedly said, "Then can you get rid of these 2 people at once?" The tower spirit said, "In my current state, it is a bit difficult to kill 2 7th grade Yuanying masters in seconds, but I can try." Lu Chuan said, "Okay, I'll trouble you this time." The tower spirit said, "After I take action, I will fall into a deep sleep again. You must find enough elixirs or spiritual treasures of heaven and earth to wake me up within 3 months. Otherwise the big demon sealed in the demon tower will likely take the opportunity to destroy the seal and find a way to escape. You should know what kind of disaster that will bring to the world." Lu Chuan solemnly said, "Don't worry, as long as I can get rid of the pursuit of Penglay fairyland this time, I will definitely find a way to wake you up as soon as possible." Tower spirit, "Okay, then you just need to put the spiritual medicine and spiritual treasures you get into the storage space, and you will naturally know how to wake me up. I'm going to take action. Be prepared. This will consume some of your strength." As soon as the words fell, Lu Chuan felt the demon suppressing tower in his dantian slowly spinning, madly drawing strength from his body. Tanlang didn't intend to waste time, and said to Kisha, "Let's go together." Although it is unlikely that he still has a powerful trump card, it is not ruled out that he has some means of saving his life. "Let's test it first, and see how it goes." Kisha nodded, and the 2 immediately rushed towards Lu Chuan. Seeing this, Lu Chuan hurriedly said, "Wait a minute." Tanlang frowned and looked at Lu Chuan, asking, "What tricks are you trying to play?" Lu Chuan smiled and said, "What tricks can I play? I thought I could still fool you and make you dare not attack me, but I didn't expect you to be fooled at all. If you 2 join forces, I will definitely not be able to beat you, so the only choice is to surrender. I don't want to be beaten and taken away by you, so you don't have to attack me. I will go with you." Kisha cursed, "Little bastard, you are really lying to us." Tanlang looked at Lu Chuan and said, "Then you come to our side. I will seal your dungeon first." Lu Chuan said, "Okay, no problem. I will let you seal it." As he said, he walked towards Tanlang and Kisha. Tanlang has been staring at Lu Chuan vigilantly because of the previous lesson. He no longer has any trust in Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan looked at the 2 people on the opposite side. As he was walking, he suddenly rushed up. At the same time, the demon suppression tower also appeared behind him and kept getting bigger, emitting a pressure that suppressed everything. "Do it," Lu Chuan shouted. The top of the demon suppression tower, which became more than 10 meters high, suddenly lit up with a dazzling light and then shone on Tanlang and Kisha. Tanlang and Kisha's faces changed. Didn't they say that he couldn't have a powerful trump card? Why did another one come out? Kisha cursed. Tanlang also frowned and shouted, "You ask me, who should I ask? This kid is definitely not simple. No wonder people in my Penglay fairyland will die when they meet him. We must catch him back. He must have a big secret." After saying that, He wanted to quickly escape from the range of light released by the demon suppression tower. But the next second, he found that his body had become extremely stiff and his movements were extremely slow. The demon suppression tower has the ability to suppress everything. Anything within the suppression range will be suppressed. Keisha said anxiously, "It's over. I feel that all the spiritual power in my body has been suppressed. This tower is not as simple as we thought." At this time, the demon suppression tower slowly rose into the air and came to the top of Tanlang and Keisha's heads, and it seemed that it wanted to smash them to death. Tanlang looked anxious, and then as if he had thought of a way, he tried his best and slapped his hand on Keisha's back, saying, "I will help you escape from this suppression range. If one of us can survive, it's a win. We must not both die at the hands of that kid." Then he resisted the suppression force and forcibly burst out a terrifying force, which exploded on Keisha's back and blew Keisha away. Keisha instantly flew out of the suppression range of the demon suppression tower and recovered his mobility. He looked at Tanlang, who was shrouded in light, with a touch of emotion on his face, and shouted, "Brother Tanlang, I will remember your kindness to me. I will definitely take that kid back, and won't let you die in vain." A terrifying gravity poured down from the demon suppression tower, directly pressing Tanlang to the ground. Keisha was even more moved when he saw this scene, thinking that Tanlang was really a good brother who could be trusted, and he would definitely treat Tanlang's dozen wives well in the future. But at this moment, he suddenly felt that there seemed to be something on his back, and then he reached out and touched it, and touched something like a talisman, pulled it down, took it in his hand, and took a look, and found that it was indeed a talisman, and the words "transfer talisman" were written on it. The moment he saw this talisman, his scalp numbed instantly, and he realized Tanlang's purpose, and immediately threw the talisman in his hand away. However, Tanlang, who was in the suppression area, did not give him this opportunity, and immediately activated the talisman. Two rays of light enveloped Keisha and Tanlang. In an instant, the positions of the two people were swapped. Tanlang was freed from the suppression, while Keisha was suppressed under the demon suppression tower. "Tanlang, you son of a bitch, fuck your grandma." Keisha's desperate roar sounded. The next second, the demon suppression tower slammed down to the ground, and with it came a gravity that increased 100 times and 1,000 times. With a loud bang, within a radius of 10 kilometers, the ground shook violently, and the animals were so frightened that they thought there was an earthquake, and fled in all directions. Keisha's shouting was covered up and disappeared. After a long time, everything returned to calm, and the demon suppression tower took off again, and continued to shrink, flying back to Luchuan's Danshan. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 482, all the cards are revealed. A 4 or 5 meter deep pit appeared in the area where the demon suppression tower had just smashed. Tanlang kept panting, looking at the pit with palpitations, and then walked to the edge of the pit and looked inside. He saw that Keisha had turned into a pool of meat paste. He could vaguely tell where his head was, and his facial features were still there, but he looked ferocious and terrifying at the moment, which made people feel goosebumps. The demon suppression tower smashed his body into meat paste, and his yuanying was directly shattered, leaving no possibility of survival. "I would rather die than let my fellow Taoist die. I learned this sentence from you, and you must understand the difficulties I have in doing this," Tanlang said to himself, and then quickly turned around and looked in the direction of Luchuan, with a strong fear in his eyes. After Luchuan took back the demon suppression tower, he felt that the tower spirit had cut off the connection with him. He tried to communicate with the tower spirit with his mind, but found that the tower spirit had no response. He looked towards Tanlang. At that time, he thought that the tower spirit could use the power of the demon suppressing tower to get rid of both Tanlang and Keisha at once, but he didn't expect Tanlang to force Keisha out of the suppression range of the demon suppressing tower. Although he felt a little pity, he was helpless. At the same time, he also had a little admiration for Tanlang in his heart. This kind of behavior of sacrificing oneself and saving companions in a crisis is naturally worthy of admiration. He also felt that he had wronged Penglai Immortal Realm. It turned out that not all people in this organization were selfish. But the next second, he saw Tanlang and Keisha exchanged positions. It turned out that this guy had pasted a talisman on the other party before pushing Keisha out of the suppression range. Although he didn't know what the talisman was, he could tell from the effect that this talisman could exchange the positions of the two people. It turned out that Tanlang pushed Keisha out to save himself. This operation made Lu Chuan stunned, and he immediately withdrew his admiration for Tan language. It seems that you all in Penglai Immortal Realm are really the same. When it comes to betraying your fellow disciples, no one hesitates. Lu Chuan said with disdain. Tanlang snorted coldly and said, when it comes to life and death, there is no such thing as fellow disciples or different sects. Survival is the most important thing. Lu Chuan, you really surprised me. 2 of our 3 7th grade Yuanying died in your hands. Do you have any trump cards? Lu Chuan looked at Tanlang and said, there is one last one. Do you want to try it? Tanlang looked at Lu Chuan and suddenly raised his hand to release a force and hit him. Lu Chuan narrowed his eyes and immediately used all his strength to block Tanlang's attack. Tanlang did not stop and released another force and attacked Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan frowned and tried his best to resist again. Tanlang looked at Lu Chuan and raised his hand again. This time he directly condensed 3 forces and attacked Lu Chuan together. Seeing this, Lu Chuan knew that he could not resist and quickly dodged. The 3 forces hit the ground, creating a terrifying pit. At this time, Tanlang showed a playful smile on his face and said, it seems that you don't have any other trump cards. Lu Chuan gritted his teeth. He didn't expect that this guy was testing him. In fact, he still had the trump card of the thief god that he hadn't used, but just now the tower spirit used the demon tower to extract nearly half of his power. Now his condition is a little bad, and his energy has been greatly affected. Although he can steal from Tanlang, it is almost impossible to cause a fatal blow to him. Tanlang is a 7th grade Yuanying. As long as the opponent seizes the opportunity to resist, he will become a fish on the chopping board after his energy is exhausted, and he will be slaughtered at will. So he dare not use the thief god now, or it can't change the current situation. If he uses it, and it may even make the situation worse. At this point, we can only fight to the death. Lu Chuan took a deep breath and made some decisions in his heart. Then he looked at Tanlang and shouted, I really don't have any trump cards, but do you think you can take me back like this? Dream on. He didn't hesitate, and a ball of fire condensed in his palm, and then rushed towards Tanlang at a high speed. He planned to take a gamble. Although the 7th grade Yuanying was too powerful for her, if she really fought, she might not be able to get a glimmer of hope. Tanlang couldn't help but curl his lips when he saw that Lu Chuan actually wanted to fight him head on, but he didn't dare to be careless. After all, this kid's trump cards are endless, and he must be more cautious. He also took out all his strength and went to meet Lu Chuan. The two fought, and the sky collapsed, and the earth cracked. Lu Chuan relied on the strength of the Xuanhuang immortal body and the sun's true fire to barely resist Tanlang's attack. After feeling the flames released by Lu Chuan, Tanlang was surprised. Is this the true fire of the sun? Lu Chuan snorted coldly, slapped out a palm carrying endless flames, and said, you know what you are talking about. Tanlang dodged this palm, and the look in his eyes when he looked at Lu Chuan changed again, with a little more greed in it. The two fought fiercely. Although Lu Chuan could barely hold on at the beginning, the gap between him and the 7th grade Yuanying was still too big, and he was completely at a disadvantage in a short while. Tanlang found an opportunity and seized Lu Chuan's flaw. After resisting Lu Chuan's moves, he grabbed his neck. Lu Chuan instantly showed a face full of panic. Don't kill me. Tanlang showed a sneer on his face and said, you are just a 4th grade Yuanying. Do you really think you can be my opponent? Lu Chuan's expression changed and suddenly showed a playful smile. You've been fooled. In his palm, a golden gourd appeared at some point. Tanlang frowned, and just when he was about to control Lu Chuan, he suddenly became distracted and froze in place. Lu Chuan stole his consciousness for 3 seconds. Without any hesitation, Lu Chuan took advantage of the moment when Tanlang lost consciousness and attacked directly, blowing up his danshan. But when he wanted to destroy Tanlang's Yuanying together, he was shocked to find that there was no Yuanying in the opponent's Danshin. 3 seconds passed quickly. Tanlang regained consciousness again. When he saw that his Danshin had been blown up, he snorted coldly and kicked Lu Chuan, kicking him dozens of meters away, and stopped after hitting a big rock. Lu Chuan instantly fell into depression. Just now, he wanted to use the characteristics of the thief good to get close to Tanlang, steal his consciousness, and then deal a fatal blow to the opponent. Under normal circumstances, he should have successfully killed Tanlang. But there was no Yuanying in the opponent's Danshin, which was really beyond his expectation. Tanlang came in front of Lu Chuan, with a sneer on his face, and said, "It was really thrilling just now. I almost fell into your trap. You should have no means of resistance now, right?" Lu Chuan raised his head, glanced at him, and asked, "Why is there no nascent soul in your Danshin?" Tanlang first released a force to seal Lu Chuan's Danshin. After making sure that the other party had completely lost the ability to resist, he explained, "You are not the only one in this world who has a trump card to save his life. I have a secret method. When my life is threatened, the nascent soul will automatically transfer from the Danshin to the brain, and there is no way to detect it. Even if my physical body is destroyed, as long as the brain is still there, my nascent soul will not disappear. Anyone who sees it will think that my nascent soul has disappeared inexplicably, and will run to look for my nascent soul. In this way, I can take the opportunity to escape and save my life. I don't know how you made my consciousness suddenly become chaotic. If it weren't for this secret method, I'm afraid I would really die in your hands." Lu Chuan sighed. He really didn't expect that the other party had such a secret method. Now that his Danshin was sealed, he could not escape, no matter how many tricks he used. He shook his head helplessly, thinking that this should be his fate, and it was impossible to escape. He glanced at Tanlang and said, "You are awesome. I will go back to Penglay Fairyland with you." Tanlang suddenly laughed. "Go back to Penglay Fairyland?" He suddenly narrowed his eyes and looked at Lu Chuan with murderous intent in his eyes. "No, I changed my mind. Killing you is a better choice for me." Chapter 483 You are not allowed to hurt him. Lu Chuan was stunned when he heard Tanlang's words. Then he frowned and asked, "What do you mean?" Tanlang looked at Lu Chuan with a sneer and said, "At first, I did think of taking you back to Penglay Fairyland and letting the deputy headmaster deal with you, but after knowing that you have a treasure like the Sun True Fire in your body, I gave up this idea. If I take you back, the deputy headmaster may give me some rewards, but the value of those rewards is definitely not as great as the Sun True Fire. With the deputy headmaster here, the Sun True Fire will never fall into my hands. But if I kill you now, the Sun True Fire will fall into my hands. At that time, I only need to tell the deputy headmaster that you are too difficult to deal with, and it is difficult to capture you alive. With the deaths of Kushao and Pyojun as a basis, the deputy headmaster will never doubt me. So there is no need for me to bring you back to Penglay Fairyland. After all, there is not much benefit for me." When Lu Chuan heard what he said, he hurriedly said, "You are not taking the organization seriously by doing this. You are betraying the organization. You have to take me back and can't kill me." Originally, he thought that even if he was brought back to Penglay Fairyland, he would have time to find a way to escape before the people in Penglay Fairyland actually killed him. But who could have thought that this guy would not play by the rules and would ignore the organization's requirements and want to kill him and take the Sun's True Fire for himself. This behavior was really too shameless. It turned out that all the people in Penglay Fairyland were not good people. Tanlang smiled and said, "Betray the organization? You should also know that this is a Dharma-ending age. It has become extremely difficult for a cultivator like me to improve my strength. What's the point of me being loyal to the organization? Can they help me improve my strength? The Sun's True Fire can. Anyway, if I kill you and take away the Sun's True Fire, no one will know. Why should I be so stupid as to hand you over to the organization?" Lu Chuan was a little anxious. In order to buy himself a chance of survival, he said seriously, "You can't improve your strength. You have to reflect on yourself. Have you practiced well over the years? Have you tried hard to find resources for practice? Don't blame all the problems on the organization. I strongly condemn your behavior. That is sorry to the organization. If you really want to kill me, you will definitely not be able to sleep because of self-blame. Maybe this will become your inner demon and lead you to fall into the devil's way. So you'd better take me back to Penglay Fairyland. From what Tanlang said, the people in Penglay Fairyland must be very interested in him. If he can offer enough conditions at that time, he may have a chance to save his life. But if Tanlang only wants to kill people and steal treasures, then he will definitely die today. After listening to Lu Chuan's words, Tanlang sneered and said, "Okay, stop talking nonsense. I have made up my mind. No matter what you say, I will never take you back to Penglay Fairyland. Don't worry, I will give you a quick death." Lu Chuan's forehead was immediately covered with cold sweat, and he quickly said, "Let's discuss it. If you want the sun's true fire, I can give it to you directly, and I can also give you some other benefits. There is no need to kill me." Tanlang said coldly, "Don't be ridiculous. From the moment I decided to embezzle the sun's true fire, you are destined to die here. Otherwise, once you run to Penglay Fairyland and tell this matter, I will be finished. Don't be lucky and think that I will let you go. This is impossible." As soon as the voice fell, a ball of terrifying power began to gather in his palm. Lu Chuan looked at Tanlang's resolute look and couldn't help but sigh, knowing that his deception would not work. He looked at the power condensed in Tanlang's palm, and a sense of unreality rose in his heart. Is it really going to die here? He tried to sense the drop of blood in his danshan. If he still had hope of turning the tables, he could only rely on this drop of blood from the Demon Lord. But at this time, his danshan was sealed, and he could not sense the existence of the drop of blood at all. Even if the danshan was not sealed, the drop of blood lying in the danshan did not show any movement. According to Sissy, this drop of blood did not seem to recognize Lu Chuan, so the possibility of saving his life in a critical moment was very small. "Boy, have a good journey. I will maximize the value of the sun true fire you left behind." Tanlang raised his hand, aimed at Lu Chuan, and released the ball of power condensed in his palm. Lu Chuan did not make any evasive behavior, because he knew that it would be useless even if he hid. This was the most difficult moment he had encountered since he embarked on the road of cultivation. All the trump cards he could use were used up, and his danshan was also sealed. Originally, he thought that he could kill back with the thief's gourd, but he did not expect that Tanlang also had a way to save his life and escape the fatal blow. The fact that he could do this was enough to shock many people. Now that he was in a dead end, there was nothing much to say. This was probably fate. After all, even if he was a true dragon, he couldn't always be blessed by good luck. The moment he embarked on the path of cultivation, he already knew that sooner or later he would have such a day. But he still had a great revenge to take, and there were so many lovely girls waiting for him, which really made him unwilling. "God, if you really favor me, please give me a miracle," Lu Chuan shouted in his heart, and then closed his eyes, intending to face this result calmly. But at this moment, a figure rushed towards this side, and then jumped up, and flew directly in front of Lu Chuan. "I don't allow you to hurt him." Lu Chuan immediately opened his eyes again, and then saw a delicate figure appear in his sight. It was Zhang Linga. He was stunned. "Linga, you." Zhang Linga turned her back to Tanlang, and faced Lu Chuan, with a smile on her face, saying, "I could die with you in my last life, and I can do the same in this life." The jade pendant hanging around her neck was emitting a dazzling light at this moment. The power released by Tanlang hit Zhang Linga's back straight. "No." Lu Chuan widened his eyes and let out a heartbreaking cry. Zhang Linga fell into Lu Chuan's arms, spitting out a large mouthful of blood, and her whole breath instantly became weak, and her face became extremely pale. Lu Chuan quickly hugged Zhang Linga, and when he saw that she was dying, and only had her last breath left, he suddenly became extremely anxious and said, "Didn't I tell you to hide? Why did you come here, to block this blow for me?" Zhang Linga smiled and said, "Didn't you say that after you died for your country in your last life, I committed suicide by taking poison to accompany you? I thought that I must have been very sad at that time, so I must not let you die before me in this life, so that I won't be sad." Lu Chuan looked at Zhang Linga with a distressed face. He reached out and stroked her face and said, "Silly girl, why are you doing this?" Tanlang didn't expect that someone would suddenly rush out to block this fatal blow for Luchuan. He glanced at Zhang and said coldly, "Indeed, why are you doing this? Do you think that, if you block this blow for him, I won't kill him?" Hearing this, Zhang turned her head to look at Tanlang, a sharp look in her eyes, and shouted, "Me? No. You hurt him." The jade pendant on her neck glowed extremely hot, and then it actually floated up. It was at this time that Luchuan noticed the jade pendant. He remembered that Zhang Xianyuan once said that Zhang was a person of destiny, and she would experience 7 life and death disasters in her life. Whenever the disaster came, her life jade pendant would react. Last time, Zhang Xianyuan asked someone to calculate that Zhang 7th disaster was in the island country, so he asked Luchuan to take Zhang to the island country. That time they met the Yellow Spring Patriarch, and Luchuan thought that the Yellow Spring Patriarch was Zhang 7th disaster. According to the legend of the person of destiny, Zhang could directly ascend to become an immortal after experiencing 7 life and death disasters, but after they escaped from the hands of the Yellow Spring Patriarch, Zhang did not show any changes, and the jade pendant also returned to calm. At that time, Luchuan thought that the Yellow Spring Patriarch must be killed to completely overcome this disaster. Now that the jade pendant had such a strong reaction at this time, Luchuan realized that Zhang 7th tribulation was probably not caused by Huangquan Patriarch. But if the 7th tribulation was not caused by Huangquan Patriarch, then what was it? Tanlang narrowed his eyes after seeing the jade pendant, not knowing what was going on. In order to prevent any accidents, he did not hesitate, and once again gathered a force and hit Zhang and Luchuan. Just when the force was about to hit Zhang and Luchuan, Zhang natal jade pendant suddenly released a force shield, wrapping them up. Tanlang's force hit the force shield, but it was like hitting cotton, and it quickly disappeared without causing any damage. How is this possible? Tanlang exclaimed, shocked by the scene in front of him. Zhang looked at Tanlang with some anger at this moment, and then stood up, soared into the air, and flew into the air. "I told you not to hurt him. Why are you challenging my bottom line?" Zhang had an extraordinary temperament, like a fairy from heaven, making people reluctant to blaspheme, and she exuded a pressure that made people want to surrender, far exceeding any cultivator in the nascent soul stage. Luchuan stared at this scene in amazement, thinking that Linga had experienced the 7th life and death tribulation, and was about to ascend to become an immortal. Her aura was so strong. What kind of realm could make people feel so palpitating? But then again, what was her 7th tribulation? Why did she inexplicably ascend to become an immortal? Tanlang also looked at Zhang floating in the air in disbelief, his head buzzing. Before, he was extremely sure that this girl was just an ordinary person, but how could she suddenly have such a terrifying aura? Was it because he attacked Luchuan? If just because of this reason, an ordinary girl suddenly became a terrifying cultivator, it would be too scary. Is it me who is powerful, or is this girl herself powerful? He looked at Zhang and swallowed his saliva. He was very afraid. He was very sure that, if this girl wanted to attack him, he might not be able to withstand even one move. He now regretted very much that he agreed to the deputy headmaster to capture Luchuan. Luchuan had countless trump cards and directly killed Piojun and Qisha. As a result, the girl who was with Luchuan suddenly became a terrifying power. How could he let people live? He thought about it, and finally forced a smile on his face and said, "Girl, calm down." Zhang snorted coldly, obviously not wanting to waste time with this guy. She raised her hand and pointed in the air. A beam of light appeared and directly penetrated the center of Tanlang's eyebrows. Tanlang didn't even react. He still kept a smile on his face, but at this moment, his vitality had begun to fade. Zhang finger not only killed his physical body, but also killed his nascent soul. With such a casual blow, a 7th grade nascent soul master disappeared from this world. Luchuan looked at this scene for a long time without saying a word. You know, no matter how fast he cultivated, he also experienced various life and death tribulations, and improved step by step. Zhang seemed to have done nothing. She just became angry because someone wanted to kill her, so she turned into a terrifying and powerful person. Anyone who encountered this would definitely feel unbalanced. However, this life and death crisis has passed. Luchuan, who was still lamenting that even a true dragon fate could not always have good luck, suddenly felt that God still favored him. Even in such a desperate situation, he could be saved and out of danger. After Zhonglinga got rid of Tanlang, the aura on her body quickly converged, and then she fell into Lu Chuan's arms again, returning to her previous weak appearance. Lu Chuan looked at the changes in Zhonglinga, frowned, and asked, "Didn't you ascend to become an immortal? Why are you so weak again?" Chapter 484 The Seventh Disaster. Zhonglinga rolled her eyes at Lu Chuan and said, "If I really ascended to become an immortal, you wouldn't be able to see me." Lu Chuan showed a trace of doubt on his face and asked, "You suddenly became so powerful just now. Isn't it because you have survived the seventh catastrophe?" Zhonglinga nodded and said, "It is true that I have survived the seventh catastrophe, that I have undergone such a change, but I'm still a long way from ascending to become an immortal. A lot of information appeared in my mind just now, and I finally understood what the so-called destined person is. To put it simply, it is the lucky person chosen by God. My natal jade pendant contains very powerful power. After I survive the seventh catastrophe, I can absorb the power in it. These powers can make me very powerful, but I feel that I'm still a long way from ascending to become an immortal." Lu Chuan nodded. The statement of ascending to become an immortal was made by Zhongxianian. In his eyes, Zhonglinga gained enormous power and became a unique strong man in the world, which was equivalent to ascending to become an immortal. After all, there is not much difference between a cultivator and an immortal for ordinary people, so there is nothing wrong with this statement. Zhonglinga, relying on the power of her natal jade pendant, even if she can't reach the level of ascending to immortality in the cultivation world, she is definitely a top-notch strongman. At least she can reach the stage of transformation, or even the stage of fusion. Lu Chuan still cast an envious look at Zhonglinga. Without hard practice, she can become the most powerful existence in the world. No matter who it is, they will definitely be extremely envious. Of course, he also understands that the current benefits are all exchanged for Zhonglinga's life and death tribulations again and again. Zhonglinga successfully survived 7 life and death tribulations, so she can now gain powerful strength without practicing. So people envy her, but as long as she fails to survive one tribulation, there will be no Zhonglinga in this world. At any time, risks and benefits are relative. Among 100 people with destiny, the probability that one person can finally survive 7 tribulations is considered high. He didn't think about it anymore, but looked at Zhonglinga and asked, "What exactly is your 7th tribulation? Why did you suddenly get through it at this time?" When Zhonglinga heard this question, her face turned red and she said, "My 7th tribulation is actually not a tribulation of life and death, but a tribulation of love." Tribulation of love. Lu Chuan was stunned. Zhonglinga nodded and said, "This calamity will only occur when I fall deeply in love with someone. Every time I love this person more deeply, my natal jade pendant will react. Until I'm willing to sacrifice my life for this person and really take practical action, my calamity will be truly completed." It was only after I knew that my 7th calamity was actually a love calamity that I figured out some of the reactions of the jade pendant I saw before. If I remember correctly, my natal jade pendant would react every time I had sex with you, and each time it became stronger than the last, until this time, when I saved you regardless of my own safety, it was truly completed. Lu Chuan looked at Zhonglinga in amazement and said, "So when your grandfather asked someone to calculate that your 7th calamity was in the island country, it was not because the ancestor Huanquan was there, nor because you would be in danger of your life there, but because you wanted to follow me to the island country? And the reason your jade pendant reacted was not because you were in danger, but because at that time, you had already begun to quietly fall in love with me?" Zhonglinga nodded shyly and said, "That's about it. I didn't expect that you would be my calamity. If I hadn't fallen in love with you, wouldn't I have never been able to get over this calamity in my life?" Lu Chuan took a deep breath and inexplicably felt that the expert that Zhongxianian had found was really amazing. This person could foresee that Zhonglinga's calamity would appear in the island country, which meant that he had calculated that he would go to the island country with Zhonglinga. After all, he was Zhonglinga's last calamity. I really didn't know what kind of deduction ability could calculate one thing so accurately. But on the other hand, this person was also the person behind the scenes who pushed Lu Chuan and Zhang Linga to have in-depth exchanges. After all, if he hadn't told Zhang Xianyuan about Zhang Linga, Zhang Xianyuan wouldn't have asked Lu Chuan to protect Zhang Linga. The so-called cause is the effect is the cause. The cause and effect cycle is unpredictable. From this, we can also see how rare Yan Zhanzi is, who has comprehended the heaven-defying magical power of the cause and effect. He stopped thinking about it. No matter what, it was something to be happy about that Zhang Linga survived this last catastrophe. Moreover, if it weren't for Zhang Linga, he would have died today. He silently decided in his heart that he must be better to Zhang Linga in the future. He looked at Zhang Linga, smiled, and said, "It could be that we were entangled in our previous life. It seems that we are natural enemies. No matter when, we will be attracted to each other." Zhang Linga rolled her eyes at him and snorted proudly, but her eyes were full of happiness. The next second, she coughed violently, and the whole person became weaker. Seeing this, Lu Chuan hurriedly asked, "Can't you absorb the power in your natal jade pendant? Why don't you absorb some power to recover from your injuries?" Zhang Linga said, "After the last catastrophe, I need to completely absorb the power in my natal jade pendant to successfully obtain the status of a man of destiny. But at that time, in order to teach that hateful guy a lesson, I called upon some of the power in my natal jade pendant, resulting in incomplete power in the jade pendant now. If I start absorbing in this state, there may be some serious problems in the middle. So I must replenish the power in my natal jade pendant before I can officially start absorbing the power in it." Hearing this, Lu Chuan asked, "Then how can I replenish the power in your natal jade pendant?" Zhang Linga said, "It seems that I can find some power from heaven and earth treasures or elixirs to replenish it." Lu Chuan thought for a while, and said, "Then you can borrow the power in the jade pendant to unlock the seal in my danshan, and then I will help you replenish the missing power in the jade pendant." Without hesitation, Zhang Linga immediately called upon the power in the jade pendant to unlock the seal in Lu Chuan's danshan. Lu Chuan immediately took out the 400-year-old spiritual medicine from the storage space and asked, "Is this okay?" This spiritual medicine was exactly the one that Lu Chuan intended to use to refine the pulse protection pill. Although the 400-year-old spiritual medicine was very rare and difficult to find, it was nothing compared to Zhang Linga's life. Zhang Linga was willing to sacrifice her life for him, so how could he feel sorry for a spiritual medicine? After seeing the spiritual medicine, and feeling the rich spiritual energy contained in it, Zhang Linga quickly nodded and said, "Okay." Lu Chuan handed the spiritual medicine over and said, "Quickly replenish the power in your natal jade pendant and absorb it. Your injury won't last long." Zhang Linga quickly nodded, took the spiritual medicine, and then picked up her natal jade pendant. The natal jade pendant instantly glowed, and then absorbed the spiritual medicine into it. After making sure that the power in the natal jade pendant had been replenished, Zhang Linga looked at Lu Chuan and said, "Once I start absorbing the power in the natal jade pendant, I will fall into a deep sleep. This process will take a very long time, maybe a month, or a year, or even several years. Will you wait for me?" Lu Chuan smiled and said, "Of course, when you wake up again, you will have turned into a fairy." "How could I bear to abandon a fairy?" Zhang Linga put her arms around Lu Chuan, and then kissed him. The two of them lingered for a long time, and Zhang Linga separated from Lu Chuan and said, "During my sleep, you can find Kingxi to relieve your depression, but you are not allowed to flirt with other girls." Lu Chuan immediately coughed twice with guilt and said, "I'll try my best." Zhang Linga immediately glared at him and shouted angrily, "Big pig hoof. Humph, you can flirt with other girls, I don't care. After all, this is your last chance. When I wake up again, you may not be able to beat me. If you dare to flirt with other girls at that time, I will break your legs." After saying that, she activated her natal jade pendant. The jade pendant floated up to the position between Zhang Linga's eyebrows, and then slowly disappeared into the air. Zhang Linga fell into a deep sleep in an instant, and a layer of imperceptible light appeared on her body surface, protecting her. Lu Chuan looked at Zhang Linga, who was sleeping, with a helpless smile on his face, and murmured, "When you wake up again, I may not be able to beat you, but you can't underestimate your rivals. There are also ruthless characters among them. I hope that when you quarrel, I will not be affected by you." Thinking of the life he might face in the future, Lu Chuan felt a headache. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He took out the pill and ate it. After recovering some strength on the spot, he picked up Zhonglinga and flew back directly in the direction of Jiangbi Han's mansion. Lu Chuan asked Han Qingxi to arrange a room and settle Zhonglinga down. He also specially found 3 maids to take turns to guard the door. Once they found any unusual movement, they would notify Lu Chuan and Han Qingxi as soon as possible. Lu Chuan also set up layers of restrictions in the room, always paying attention to Zhonglinga's situation. No matter what happened, he could sense it at the first time. After Zhonglinga was settled, Han Qingxi had time to ask Lu Chuan about the specific situation. Lu Chuan recounted to Han Qingxi what happened after he and Yu Cixi left the Han family. Han Qingxi listened with great interest. After hearing that Yu Cixi's real purpose was not to seek revenge on her former love rival, but to cut off the love sickness and loneliness that she had endured for 1,000 years, she was so moved that she shed tears. Later, when she learned that Zhonglinga had completed her last disaster in order to save Lu Chuan, she said seriously, "Women who like brother Lu Chuan can sacrifice their lives for him, and I want to be a woman who can sacrifice her life for brother Lu Chuan." Then she looked at Lu Chuan seriously and said, "Brother Lu Chuan, let's jump off the building. I'll be your scapegoat." Lu Chuan immediately gave her a slap on the head and told her to be honest and not to cause some fatal troubles just to prove herself, because that was not a sign of true love for someone. Han Qingxi had to cover her head and agreed to Lu Chuan. Then she said that she and Zhonglinga had agreed to serve Lu Chuan together. During the time when Zhonglinga was in a coma, she was determined not to have anything happen with Lu Chuan, otherwise it would be a performance that was sorry for Zhonglinga. Lu Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he didn't say anything. After all, there was such an agreement between good sisters, and he should be relieved. At least Han Qingxi and Zhonglinga would definitely not fight for him in the future. That night, Han Qingxi did what he said and arranged a room for Lu Chuan, and he went back to his room to sleep. But the next night, someone who couldn't bear it blushed, wearing only a thin pajamas, took advantage of the moonlight, quietly slipped into Lu Chuan's room, climbed onto his bed, and said that he couldn't sleep at night, and came to Lu Chuan to talk. As the two talked, they started fighting, and the earth shook. And in the distant Penglai fairyland, the deputy master in white clothes, white hair and white beard, with a group of Yuanying powerhouses from Penglai fairyland, stood in the hall where the soul lamps were stored. They all looked solemnly at the soul lamps representing Tanlang, Piojun and Qisha, which had been extinguished, and fell into a long silence. Chapter 485, Clues to the 400 years old elixir. Did the 3 of them also die at the hands of that Lu Chuan? After a long time, a nascent soul expert broke the silence. The deputy headmaster raised his hand and waved, and the soul lamps of Tanlang, Piojun, Qisha and the other 3 showed the scenes before their death. All of them had Lu Chuan. The only difference was that in the scene before Tanlang's death, in addition to Lu Chuan, there was also a girl. This was enough to show that the deaths of the 3 people were related to Lu Chuan. This made all the nascent soul experts feel a little palpitated. Tanlang, Piojun and Qisha joined forces. Even the 8th grade nascent soul experts would have to avoid their edge. They couldn't figure out how Lu Chuan managed to kill all 3 of them. A group of people who were originally high and mighty and didn't take Lu Chuan, a wild cultivator, seriously now had to pay attention to this guy. At this time, one person asked, "The 3 of them died at the hands of Lu Chuan. Do we have to send more people to seek revenge on this Lu Chuan?" Upon hearing this, everyone immediately looked at each other, revealing an obvious desire not to go. Especially the several 8th grade Yuanying masters present. Although their strength is stronger than Tanlang, Piojun and Qisha 3 people, but Lu Chuan can kill the 3 of them when Tanlang and the other 2 join forces, which is enough to show that this kid must have some terrible trump card. These 8th grade Yuanying are used to being arrogant and domineering. Who would think of doing something that increases their risk when they have nothing to do? Even if they have the opportunity to kill Lu Chuan, they are unwilling to do it. One of the 8th grade Yuanying rolled his eyes and looked at the deputy headmaster, saying, "I didn't expect that Lu Chuan would be so difficult to deal with. Tanlang and the other 3 can't defeat him together. There must be something strange." Deputy headmaster, For the sake of safety, why don't you personally take action to capture Lu Chuan back so that we can also reduce some losses in Penglai Fairyland? What do you think? Hearing this, everyone immediately agreed. The deputy headmaster stared at Lu Chuan in the picture for a long time, then murmured, "Lu Chuan killed many members of my Penglai Fairyland, so of course he cannot be let go. However, I have some insights in the past few days and plan to go into seclusion. In this case, let's discuss Lu Chuan's matter after I come out of seclusion." Han's house. In Lu Chuan's room, Lu Chuan lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling in a daze. After a while, Han Qingxi poked his head out from under the quilt with a flushed face and said, "Brother Lu Chuan, are you exhausted? Why haven't you tried for such a long time and there is no response?" Lu Chuan looked down at Han Qingxi, reached out and pinched her butt under the quilt, and said, "It's the 8th time today. Even the donkey in the production team needs to rest. Do you want to tire me to death?" Han Qingxi immediately said embarrassedly, Qingxi just misses brother Lu Chuan too much and has no other way to express it, so this is the only way. If brother Lu Chuan is tired, then Qingxi will let you rest for a while." Lu Chuan rolled his eyes at her and said, "Didn't you say that you wouldn't do that kind of thing with me before Linga wakes up? Aren't you breaking your promise now?" Han Qingxi said with a blushing face, "I saw on the internet that some things will not do well if they are not used for a long time and need regular maintenance. I'm doing the maintenance for Linga, so it can't be considered a breach of promise." Lu Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't expect Han Qingxi to become so naughty. He really didn't know who he learned it from. He didn't say anything else, but continued to think. He killed the 3 Tanlangs. Penglai Fairyland would definitely not let him go. They would definitely send more powerful people next time. The reason why he was able to kill the 3 Tanlangs was because of his life-saving trump card. Now the jade pendant left by his mother is gone, and the tower spirit has fallen into a deep sleep. If he encounters 3 7th grade Yuanying powerhouses again, he will have no hope of turning the tables. So the most important thing for him now is to quickly improve his strength. If he can devour the 9 heavens mysterious fire, his realm will definitely be greatly improved, and his combat effectiveness will also increase exponentially. However, the 400 years of spiritual medicine used to refine the vein protection pill was given to Zhang. If he wants to devour the 9 heavens mysterious fire now, he has to find a spiritual medicine that is more than 400 years old to refine the vein protection pill. In addition to this, he also needs to find enough spiritual treasures or elixirs within 3 months to awaken the tower spirit. Otherwise, once the big monsters suppressed in the demon tower break the seal, it will not only be him who will be in trouble, but the whole world. He is now worried about where to find the 400-year-old elixir. Han Qingxi looked at Lu Chuan's pensive look and asked, "Brother Lu Chuan, what are you thinking about? It seems like you are worried about something." Lu Chuan smiled and said, "Yeah, I'm worried about where to find a 400-year-old spiritual medicine to solve my urgent need to improve my strength. If I can successfully break through this time, my ability to resist danger will be taken to a higher level." Hearing this, Han Qingxi murmured, 400-year-old spiritual medicine. I seem to know where to find it." Lu Chuan's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he quickly asked, "Do you know where there is a 400-year-old spiritual medicine?" Han Qingxi nodded and said, "I heard from Sister Nangang before that one of her good friends encountered some troubles and needed someone to help solve it. It seems that the reward is a 400-year-old spiritual medicine." When Lu Chuan heard this, a trace of confusion appeared on his face, and he asked, "Who is Sister Nangang?" Han Qingxi said, "It's Nangang Duodo. You helped her solve the problem of the haunted ancestral temple before." Lu Chuan then remembered who Nangang Duodo was. He didn't expect that Han Qingxi was still in contact with the eldest daughter of the Nangang family. He asked suspiciously, "You are still in contact with her? I remember that she left China and returned to the Nangang family overseas after dealing with the affairs of the ancestral temple. How did you know about her friend?" Han Qingxi suddenly felt guilty. She didn't dare to look directly into Lu Chuan's eyes and said hesitantly, "It's after you asked me to give her a massage last time. I asked her for her contact information. We have a lot of common topics, so I often chat with her. When I called her 2 days ago, she mentioned this friend." Lu Chuan glared, Kingsley, you wouldn't really have any thoughts about her, right? Han Kingsley immediately explained anxiously. No, absolutely not. Sister Nangang and I are just very good friends. Kingsley will never do anything to let brother Lu Chuan down. Brother Lu Chuan, if you don't believe me, I won't contact her in the future. Looking at Han Kingsley's expression, Lu Chuan couldn't help laughing and said, okay, I believe you. Give me Nangang Duodo's phone number and I'll ask her about her friend. Han Kingsley nodded quickly. Lu Chuan got Nangang Duodo's phone number and called her immediately. After revealing his identity, he explained what he had heard from Han Kingsley about her friend. Miss Nangang, I wonder if your friend's problem has been solved. I happen to need a 400-year-old elixir. If not, I can try. Nangang Duodo said, her problem hasn't been solved yet, but if you want to help her, you have to come overseas. Also, her problem is a bit weird and may not be so easy to solve. Chapter 486 Women's Intuition. Lu Chuan asked with some doubts, it's a bit weird. Nangang Duodo said, yes, it's very weird. I can't explain it clearly on the phone. Although I know you are very powerful, the thing my friend encountered is too bizarre, and only you can help her overseas. Otherwise, forget it. It would be too embarrassing if you make a wasted trip. Lu Chuan thought for a while and asked, regardless of whether I can help her solve this problem, as long as I help her solve this problem, will she definitely give me a 400-year-old spiritual medicine as a reward? Nangang Duodo said, yes, as long as you can solve the trouble she encountered, she will definitely give you a 400-year-old spiritual medicine. It can even be said that the trouble she encountered is related to this 400-year-old spiritual medicine. Lu Chuan's heart was filled with infinite curiosity, and he wanted to know what kind of trouble Nangang Duodo's friend had encountered. He knew that spiritual medicine would have some characteristics after growing for 400 years. For example, the love grass taken away by Guziana-sang liked people to fall in love and grew by the power of love between lovers. The 400-year-old spiritual medicine he gave to Zonglinger has the property of making people more curious. Once you get too close to the spiritual medicine, your curiosity will increase exponentially. In serious cases, you can't help but peek into other people's secrets. So after getting the spiritual medicine, Lu Chuan has always kept it in the storage space and never took it out. After all, curiosity kills the cat, and he doesn't want to cause any trouble because of curiosity. Nangang Duodo said that the trouble her friend encountered had a lot to do with the 400-year-old spiritual medicine itself, which was probably caused by the characteristics of the spiritual medicine. As for Nangang Duodo not wanting to say on the phone what kind of trouble her friend encountered, it might be that the characteristics of this spiritual medicine are a bit difficult to talk about. Out of his need for the 400-year-old spiritual medicine and his curiosity, Lu Chuan said to Nangang Duodo, I really need a 400-year-old spiritual medicine now. If I can get the spiritual medicine by solving your friend's trouble, I'm willing to go overseas. If I can't solve it, I will say that I'm not as good as others. Miss Nangang doesn't have to blame herself. When Nangang Duodo heard what Lu Chuan said, she had to agree. Okay, I'll tell you the address and pick you up when you arrive. Then she told Lu Chuan the address and made an appointment with Lu Chuan. After Lu Chuan hung up the phone, he asked Han Kingsley to ask the Han family to help him apply for a passport and buy a plane ticket. The headquarters of the Nangang family is located in the United States. Nangang Duodo is currently in the United States, and her friend is naturally there. At first, Lu Chuan thought about flying directly over. After all, this was the easiest way to go, but then he thought that the world's technology is developing very rapidly today. If he flew directly over the border, he would definitely be discovered by various detection systems. At that time, he might be mistaken for a missile or something like that. If it caused international tensions again, it would be troublesome, so he decided to fly there. Han Kingsley naturally wanted to go with Lu Chuan, but was rejected by Lu Chuan. Although Zonglinger is fine now, it is better to leave someone around, so that it is convenient to solve any emergencies. Han Kingsley thought that Zonglinger still needed someone to take care of her, so she had to give up the plan to go with Lu Chuan, but she carefully told Lu Chuan to be careful of Nangang Duodo. Her intuition told her that this woman might be interested in him. Lu Chuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry, thinking that Han Qingxi was overthinking. After all, he and Nangang Duodo had only met once, so how could the other party be interested in him? Han Qingxi told Lu Chuan not to underestimate women's intuition. She found out from chatting with Nangang Duodo that she was very concerned about Lu Chuan's situation, so there must be something wrong. Lu Chuan thought Han Qingxi's idea was a bit exaggerated and asked, "Since you suspect she is interested in me, why do you still like to chat with her?" Han Qingxi said confidently, "Because she is beautiful, has a nice voice, and often sends me private photos." At this point, she suddenly realized that something was wrong, secretly glanced at Lu Chuan, and quickly changed her words. "Of course, these are not important. What's important is that she is far away overseas and has no intersection with you. I can also have a friend to chat with when I'm bored, so I don't mind being friends with her, but now you are going to find her, so I have to remind you." Lu Chuan was a little helpless and couldn't understand the girl's brain circuit. He knew that it was the most irrational to argue with a girl at this time, so he said solemnly, "Okay, don't worry, I will definitely be on guard against her." Han Qingxi nodded with satisfaction. At the same time, in the United States, New York, in a skyscraper that towers into the sky, on the top floor, in a luxurious office, Nangang Duodo sat at her desk. After hanging up Lu Chuan's phone call, she suddenly showed an expectant smile on her face. She took out her small Macup mirror, took a look at her Macup, and nodded with satisfaction when she saw that she was still as beautiful as a fairy. Because Lu Chuan helped solve the haunted house last time, Nangang Duodo still had some good feelings for Lu Chuan, and she also recognized his ability. Of course, the most important thing is that the spirit produced after her grandfather's death told her through Han Qingxi to pursue Lu Chuan, and she actually kept this in mind. Although Han Qingxi clearly stated that Lu Chuan was hers, and she promised Han Qingxi that she would not have any ideas about Lu Chuan, she always listened to her grandfather. After knowing that her grandfather wanted her to be Lu Chuan's woman, although she had been convincing herself that Lu Chuan was already in a relationship and she should not have any more ideas, the more she forced herself not to think about it, the stronger the idea became. During this period, she had people investigating Lu Chuan. After learning about what Lu Chuan had done, she became even more curious about this legendary man, and she wanted to get to know him better. But she also knew that nothing could happen between her and Lu Chuan, and it would not be good for her to focus on a man she couldn't have, so she could only think of ways to fill herself up and keep herself busy so that she would have no time to think about those things which made her feel better. And now that Lu Chuan was coming to see her, she couldn't help but think about it again. At this time, a blonde secretary walked in and handed a schedule to Nangang Duodo, saying, "President, this is your schedule for the next week. Please take a look." Nangang Duodo didn't even look at it and said directly, "Please cancel them all for me. I have to meet a very important friend next week and don't have time to deal with these things." The secretary nodded immediately, but then said, "President, the dance party with supernatural performances that Mr. Chen specially invited you to the day after tomorrow has been confirmed. I have also informed Mr. Chen that you will go. We have rejected Mr. Chen 6 times. If we stand him up again this time, it may affect the cooperation between our company and Chen Group." Nangang Duodo heard this, thought about it, and said to herself, "The day after tomorrow. Lu Chuan will also arrive the day after tomorrow. In this case, we might as well take him with us." She raised her head, looked at the secretary, and said, "Then cancel all the others, except this dance party." "Okay." The secretary nodded. Chapter 487 Heading to the United States. 2 days later, Lu Chuan arrived at Jiangbai International Airport. He arrived at the boarding gate and saw that it would take some time before boarding, so he planned to find a place to sit down and rest for a while. At this moment, a shout came from behind him. "Lu Chuan?" Lu Chuan turned and looked behind him and saw a man and a woman coming behind him. The man had a slicked back hair, wore sunglasses and a beach shirt, and looked a little greasy. The woman had wavy hair and big red lips. She looked pretty, but seemed a little wanton, which is what people often call slutty. Lu Chuan stared at the two people for a few times, but didn't remember who they were. However, since he had encountered similar things before, he asked tentatively, "Could one of you two be my classmate?" The man with the slicked back hair immediately said, "It's you, kid. I'm your class monitor. Don't you recognize me?" Lu Chuan stared at the man with the slicked back hair for a few times and found that this person did look a little familiar, but he couldn't remember who he was for a while. The man with the slicked back hair immediately took off his sunglasses and said with a smile, "Why, you can't recognize him? Ma Chenggang, you were the monitor in high school, you remember now." Only then did Lu Chuan recall some memories of the person in front of him. This person was indeed the monitor in his high school, but at that time he didn't have a good impression of this monitor, because this guy was a pure flatterer and very snobbish. When he was in school, he would follow the rich second generations in the class all day long to flatter them, and even flatter the teachers in exchange for some benefits for himself. As for a child from a poor family like Lu Chuan, he was naturally the most worthless person in Ma Chenggang's eyes. At that time, he always ignored Lu Chuan, and sometimes even bullied Lu Chuan by taking advantage of his prestige of running errands for the rich second generations. It turned out to be Monitor Ma. "I really didn't recognize him just now," Lu Chuan said politely. Ma Chenggang showed a proud look on his face and said, "I know. After graduation, I have become a superior person. My temperament alone is not comparable to those losers. It's normal that you can't recognize it." Lu Chuan was speechless, thinking that I didn't see that you have the temperament of a superior person. Ma Chenggang turned his head and looked at the woman next to him and said, "Shanshan, this is the clown I mentioned to you in the past who delivered food to support his girlfriend, but was cheated by his girlfriend." When the woman named Shanshan heard this, she looked at Lu Chuan with a look of contempt. "Do you two treat me as air?" Lu Chuan couldn't stand these two rude guys. If it weren't for the friendship between them as classmates, he would have given them a big bag each to let them calm down. Ma Chenggang looked at Lu Chuan with a smile again and said, "Lu Chuan, you are not in the wrong place, are you? This is an international flight. You are going abroad. Don't make a fool of yourself, since it's your first time on a plane." Lu Chuan said patiently, "Yes, I'm going to New York City." Ma Chenggang immediately sized Lu Chuan up and down and said, "TSK, I can't tell. What's the matter? You can't make it in China and want to try your luck by working abroad?" Ma Chenggang interrupted Lu Chuan before he could answer. He didn't care what Lu Chuan was doing abroad. He just wanted to use this to bring out something he wanted to show off. "Let me tell you, Shanshan and I are going abroad this time because we successfully interviewed for the job of housekeeper and cook in a manor owned by the beautiful president of the Yundo Group. The beautiful president of the Yundo Group is the eldest daughter of the Nangang family. Don't think that we are just going to be her housekeeper and cook, but you have to know that it is abroad, a paradise-like place. What's more, we are going to a world-class manor, and the treatment there is not comparable to ordinary jobs. It is no exaggeration to say that my status as a housekeeper there is higher than some domestic entrepreneurs. What do you think? Are you envious?" Lu Chuan endured the embarrassment, smiled at Ma Chenggang, and said, "That's good." Ma Chenggang looked proud and said, "Don't worry, when I'm stable there, I will arrange a job as a servant for you, and you can just follow me and enjoy the good life." At this time, ticket checking and boarding began. Lu Chuan really didn't want to bother with his old classmate, so he quickly said, "Well, we are about to get on the plane. I'll go check my ticket first." Ma Chenggang looked at Lu Chuan so anxious to get on the plane, and his face showed contempt. He said, "This guy must know that I found such a good job abroad. He is envious and jealous. He feels embarrassed, so he ran away." Shan sneered and said, "I think so too. That guy is a loser at first glance. He can't compare with us." Ma Chenggang hugged Shan and said with a smile, "Okay, let's get on the plane too. I heard that the air abroad is sweet. After I go out, I will never come back." The plane took off and finally arrived in New York after a long journey. Lu Chuan walked out of the airport. Just now on the plane, he had mastered English proficiently with the advantage of being a cultivator, so even if he came to a foreign country, he would not be troubled by the language barrier. He came to the exit of the airport, and with a sweep of his spiritual sense, he had already found Nangang Duodo who came here early to greet him. At the same time, He also noticed Ma Chenggang and Shan Shan running towards him and couldn't help but frowning. Lu Chuan, why are you walking so fast? Isn't it because my current achievements have hit your self-confidence? There is no need for you to hide from me. We are classmates. Even if there is a big gap between us, I still recognize this relationship. You don't need to feel inferior in front of me. Come on, I will treat you to a meal, and we can reminisce about the past together. Ma Chenggang said. Lu Chuan looked at him speechlessly and said, no need, someone is here to pick me up. Ma Chenggang immediately said, look at you, even if you don't want to have dinner with me, there's no need to lie. Everyone knows that you've been doing badly after graduation, and someone is here to pick you up. Do you still have friends abroad? At this time, Shan Shan tugged at Ma Chenggang's arm and said excitedly, honey, look, it's Miss Nangang. Ma Chenggang turned his head and saw that it was really Nangang Duodo walking towards him. He straightened up and said excitedly, why is Miss Nangang here? Could it be she came here to greet us? Shan Shan said, it's very likely. After all, we are going to work at her manor. Maybe our abilities are too outstanding, which makes Miss Nangang extremely fond of us, so she came to pick us up directly. Ma Chenggang's heartbeat quickened a few points, and then he turned his head to show off to Lu Chuan. Did you see that? That fairy-like beauty is Miss Nangang. She came here to pick us up. In this case, we won't have dinner with you. You can find the KFC to deal with it yourself. Lu Chuan's face was full of black lines, and he expressed deep admiration for the two people's imagination. He didn't plan to tell them the truth about Nangang Duodo's coming here, thinking that he would laugh at them later. Soon, Nangang Duodo came here. She had been paying attention to the direction of the exit, and she rushed over immediately after seeing Lu Chuan's figure. When Ma Chenggang and Shan Shan saw Nangang Duodo coming, they showed respect on their faces, and then they were about to step forward to say hello. However, Nangang Duodo ignored them and walked straight to Lu Chuan. She stared at Lu Chuan, smiled and said, long time no see. Lu Chuan also smiled at her and said, long time no see. Ma Chenggang and Shan Shan froze in place. Chapter 488 You are fired. Miss Nangang, is she here to pick up Lu Chuan? Ma Chenggang muttered to himself. Shan Shan said, didn't you say this guy is a loser? Why did Miss Nangang come to pick him up in person? And looking at the two of them, they look like good friends who haven't seen each other for a long time. I even think Miss Nangang is a little reserved in front of this guy. Is Miss Nangang like this to everyone? Generally speaking, people only become reserved when they meet someone they value very much. Ma Chenggang said, who knows what kind of luck this guy has that Miss Nangang can pick him up at the airport in person. Don't worry about him for now. This is the first time we meet Miss Nangang. We must leave a good impression on Miss Nangang. Thinking of this, he straightened his clothes, then walked up to Nangang Duodo with his head held high, bowed to her, and greeted her in standard English. Miss Nangang, it's an honor to meet you here. I'm the latest housekeeper recruited by Yoro's manor, Ma Chenggang. It seems that even God is optimistic about our cooperation this time. We have the opportunity to see you as soon as we get off the plane. Nangang Duodo turned her head to look at Ma Chenggang, frowned, and asked, aren't you Chinese? Ma Chenggang was stunned for a moment, then switched to Mandarin and said, yes. Nangang Duodo said, then why are you pretending to be a foreigner? Can't you see that I'm Chinese? The expression on Ma Chenggang's face rose. He originally wanted to show his business ability so that Nangang Duodo would feel that he had found the right housekeeper, but he didn't expect that it would backfire. He had to force out an awkward smile and said, I'm sorry, I thought you have lived abroad for many years and are familiar with communicating in English. Nangang Duodo snorted coldly and said, even if I live here, it's only because our family's industry is here. I'm a real Chinese, and I love Chinese culture very much. Therefore, all people recruited by our group, as long as they are not Chinese, must learn Mandarin. Now our internal staff of the group communicate in Mandarin, and our family has been committed to promoting the spread of Chinese culture in its overseas development. Now that our China is strong, there is no need to pretend to be a foreigner to gain recognition from others when you go out. That will only become a joke. Ma Chenggang coughed twice and said, Miss Nangang taught me that I will definitely be proud of being a Chinese in the future. These are minor issues and will not affect our cooperation. Shanshan also stepped forward and said with a smile, "That's right, Miss Nangang, I'm the newly hired cook of Rose Manor. We are a couple. As the saying goes, men and women work together, and work is not tiring. We will definitely help you manage the manor in the future." Nangang Duodo looked at the two of them and said speechlessly, "Don't you know how the previous housekeeper of my manor was fired?" Ma Chenggang and Shanshan looked at each other and then shook their heads. Nangang Duodo said, "The previous housekeeper was fired by me because he had sex with the cooks, maids, and even their daughters in the manor. So my manor now prohibits employees from dating. I didn't expect that you two were actually a couple. It seems that I have to recruit a new housekeeper and cook." Ma Chenggang and Shanshan both changed their faces. Ma Chenggang quickly said, "Miss Nangang, this is a misunderstanding. She and I are not lovers. She just has a crush on me. There is no relationship between us. It is not easy for you to recruit a housekeeper like me. Please don't recruit again." Shanshan also said, "Yes, I have a crush on him. We are not lovers. It is all my wishful thinking. You must keep us." Nangang Duodo snorted coldly and said, "I didn't expect that you two don't care about each other's feelings. For a job, you don't recognize each other's identity. Although I'm against employee romance now, I originally thought that if you two are committed to each other, it would be more stable, and the possibility of messing around with other people would be greatly reduced. But you two obviously love this job more, so I think we should not cooperate." After that, she took out her mobile phone, made a call, and said, "Help me dismiss the newly hired housekeeper and cook of Rose Manor, and dismiss the person who recruited them. You can recruit any kind of people at will. Such a short-sighted guy is not suitable to work under me." Ma Chenggang and Shanshan both looked desperate. They never thought that they would be fired before they even started working in the good job abroad. The key point was that they had boasted to everyone around them before they came. Now they would become a joke in everyone's eyes. Suddenly, Ma Chenggang looked at Lu Chuan and said, "Lu Chuan, you are Miss Nangang's friend. Please help me to beg for mercy." Lu Chuan shrugged and said, "I'm also against employees dating. This is not conducive to work." Then he smiled and looked at Nangang Duodo and said, "Let's go." Nangang Duodo immediately took Lu Chuan away from here, leaving Ma Chenggang and Shanshan with desperate faces. Lu Chuan followed Nangang Duodo into a Rolls Royce. Then the two of them couldn't help laughing. In fact, the reason why Nangang Duodo dismissed Ma Chenggang and Shanshan at that time was because Lu Chuan secretly communicated with Nangang Duodo and told her that Ma Chenggang was his classmate and was very annoying. Nangang Duodo didn't like these two guys the first time she saw them, so she just found an excuse to fire them. Anyway, they were just housekeepers and cooks. Nangang Duodo had more than one manor under her name, and firing employees was a common thing. They mocked me for a long time, and seeing their expressions when they were fired by you, I was really happy. Miss Nangang, thank you so much today," Lu Chuan said to Nangang Duodo with a smile. Nangang Duodo raised the corner of her mouth and said, "Since I have helped you vent your anger, how about you do me a small favor today?" Lu Chuan asked, "What favor?" Nangang Duodo said, "Accompany me to a dance. After the dance, take a night's rest, and I will take you to meet my friend tomorrow." Lu Chuan smiled and said, "Miss Nangang, you are so polite. It is my honor to take me to the dance, and I can also eat with you. This is taking advantage of you, not helping you." Nangang Duodo thought for a while and said, "Okay, then can I make another request to you?" Lu Chuan said, "You say." Nangang Duodo suddenly became a little shy and said, "That's right, the title of Miss Nangang sounds too distant. Can you call me Duodo?" If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 489 Dance. Lu Chuan looked at Nangang Duodo in surprise, thinking that what Kingxi said could be true. Is this Miss Nangang really interested in me? He coughed twice and said, "Well, Miss Duodo, please give me more advice." Nangang Duodo immediately said, "Oh, don't use the word girl, otherwise there is no difference between Miss Nangang and Miss Duodo." As if she was a little guilty, she quickly added, "I think we are friends, so we should call each other more intimately, just like I will call you Luchuan directly. If you keep calling me girl, it will make me feel that you don't regard me as a friend." Luchuan was a little helpless and said, "Okay, Duodo, is this okay?" Nangang Duodo nodded with satisfaction, and then said to the driver, "Let's go." The two came all the way to the most prosperous area of New York City, and the driver parked the car in front of a skyscraper. The top of the building is not written with English letters like other buildings here, but with a big Chen hanging on it. This building belongs to the Chen family, whose strength is not inferior to that of the Nangang family. The two families are both powerful figures in the United States. Luchuan followed Nangang Duodo into the building. The venue for the ballroom had been set up. It looked a bit simple, but exuded an elegant atmosphere. Various drinks and delicacies were placed on the long table. Exquisite decorations were scattered around, and expensive crystal wine glasses were placed calmly on the table. The guests wore elegant and noble dresses, and carefully combed hairstyles, showing their noble status and high quality life. The male guests wore black evening gowns, white shirts and black bow ties, with fluttering ribbons. The female guests wore equally noble dresses, colorful tassel dresses, numerous jewelry accessories and charming fragrances, just like butterflies dancing. There were constantly waiters entertaining the guests, and the chocolate desserts, champagne and other delicacies were exquisite and elegant. The noisy sound covered the entire venue, and people talked and laughed, not affected by the warm atmosphere at all. Most of them were white-skinned people. Although there were many yellow people, the number was not large. As soon as Nangang Duodo entered here, she immediately became the focus of the whole place. Although there were many blonde, blue-eyed hot Western beauties present, it had to be admitted that Nangang Duodo crushed them both in appearance and temperament. At this time, a tall, handsome young man who looked like a Chinese walked towards this side. He looked at Nangang Duodo and said with a smile, "Duodo, you are finally here. I have been waiting for you here for a long time. You are still as pleasing to the eye as always." When Nangang Duodo saw this man, she immediately frowned and said, "Chen Yiling, how many times have I told you not to call me Duodo? We are not that familiar with each other. You make me feel disgusted when I call me like that." Chen Yiling did not feel embarrassed at all, and still said with a smile, "We have known each other for so many years. What's wrong with calling you like that? And I still want to marry you as my wife. I'm just adapting to it in advance. Okay, come with me quickly. The chef I found this time is good at your favorite cooking skills. You don't need to bring this bodyguard. Let him wait outside." Nangang Duodo did not leave, but said with a cold face, "Chen Yiling, don't joke with me like this in the future. The reason why I came to this dance today is to tell you not to bother me again in the future. Also, he is not my bodyguard, he is my boyfriend." After saying that, she directly hugged Luchuan's arm. Luchuan's eyes widened, thinking that this scene was a bit familiar. Nangang Duodo gave him a look, asking him to cooperate, and he had no choice but to pick up the business of pretending to be someone's boyfriend again. He straightened his chest, glanced at Chen Yiling, and said, "Please don't harass my girlfriend again in the future, otherwise don't blame me for being rude to you." Nangang Duodo didn't expect Luchuan to be able to improvise, and he laughed out loud, almost revealing himself. Chen Yiling was a little surprised. After looking at Luchuan, he looked at Nangang Duodo and asked, "He is your boyfriend? Why have I never seen you mention it?" Nangang Duodo said, "I met him when I went back to China last time. He was the one who solved the problem of our Nangang family's ancestral temple. At that time, I was amazed by the means he showed, so I fell in love with him and confessed to him, so we got together. He just got here today and came to play with me on purpose, so I brought him to see you by the way." Luchuan glanced at Nangang Duodo and thought, "Is this something you made up, or you thought about it a long time ago? It sounds like the truth." Then he looked at Chen Yiling. According to his past experience, this guy will definitely feel that he is not worthy of Nangang Duodo and will make trouble for him. But what he didn't expect was that Chen Yilong actually smiled, then stretched out a hand towards him and said, "I'm so sorry, it turns out that you are Duodo's boyfriend. Don't take what I said just now to heart. Those were all jokes between Duodo and me. Our Chen family and Nangang family have a lot of cooperation, so she and I have known each other for a long time. I'm thick-skinned and sometimes I like to joke with her. Don't worry, since Duodo has a boyfriend, I will never joke with her like this in the future. I'm a very sensible person." Lu Chuan looked at Chen Yilong and felt that this guy was actually quite cultured. It seemed that he had thought too much just now. He shook hands with Chen Yilong and said with a smile, "Thank you very much." Chen Yilong glanced at Nangang Duodo again and said, "Since you have brought your boyfriend, I won't disturb you two. You two can get some food. There will be performances by people with special powers later, and they may interact with the guests. If you are chosen, you must give me some face, and don't embarrass me in front of everyone." Seeing that Chen Yilong was not pestering her, Nangang Duodo softened her attitude towards him and said, "Got it." Chen Yilong smiled, glanced at Lu Chuan again, nodded, and left. After Chen Yilong walked away, Nangang Duodo looked at Lu Chuan embarrassedly and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say you were my boyfriend. It's just that guy is so annoying. I can only use this method to get rid of him. I'm sorry to cause you trouble." Lu Chuan smiled and said, "It's okay. Anyway, it's not the first time I do this. By the way, what is the supernatural performance he just mentioned?" Nangang Duodo said, "It seems that he has recently found a few people with special abilities. They are very powerful and want to let everyone see them." Lu Chuan nodded thoughtfully, a little curious about what kind of special abilities this so-called supernatural person can have. In the distance, in a hidden corner, Chen Yilong changed his gentlemanly attitude just now and looked at the position where Lu Chuan and Nangang Duodo were with a sinister face, his eyes full of greed and covetousness. Behind him stood three tall, muscular, and sharp-looking foreigners. Their hair colors were different. One was red, one was yellow, and the other was green. Each of these three people exudes a dangerous aura that makes people shudder. "Boss, the woman you want seems to have been snatched away by someone else," the red-haired foreigner said. Chen Yilong snorted coldly and said, "She can only be mine. No one can take her away. Go according to the original plan. Tonight, as long as I take down Nangang Duodo, you can also have fun. Do you understand?" "Yes," the three answered in unison. Chapter 490, The Superpower. After almost everyone who attended the party arrived, Chen Yilong came to the stage that had been built in advance. A spotlight shone on him, and everyone present focused their attention on him. Chen Yilong smiled and said loudly, "Everyone, I invited everyone here today. In addition to inviting everyone to attend the party and enhance communication, I also specially prepared a special performance for everyone. I believe that you should have heard before you came that I recently found several friends with special abilities. They all have incredible abilities. Next, I will invite them to come on stage and show their abilities to open everyone's eyes." Everyone immediately began to applaud and welcome him. In modern society, technology has been so advanced that people are more inclined to science. The so-called special abilities are simply something to fool people. I think young Master Chen just found a few circus performers to fool everyone and give everyone a good show. A tall foreign man in a suit said with disdain. Nangang Duodo, who was standing beside him, heard this and didn't agree with it. After all, she was a person who had experienced supernatural events and knew that there were too many things in the world that she couldn't understand. Moreover, the so-called science was just a subject used to explain things that people had already mastered. Outside of science, there were too many things that humans couldn't understand or even hadn't seen. Many people didn't believe in the existence of these things, but it was just because they couldn't touch these things from birth to death. Lu Chuan, who was next to Nangang Duodo, couldn't agree with this statement even more. After all, he was a practitioner, which was even more incomprehensible than a superpower. Soon, three tall, muscular, and fierce white men with red, yellow, and green hair walked onto the stage. Everyone was stunned by the breath they released. The man who said that Chen Yilong was looking for circus actors to fool people suddenly shut up and looked at the 3 people on the stage with a hint of fear in his eyes. These 3 people feel so scary. Nangang Duodo muttered to himself. Lu Chuan also looked at these 3 people curiously. He felt the presence of spiritual energy in these 3 people, but it was very different from the spiritual energy of practitioners. It was certain that these 3 people were definitely not practitioners. They didn't even have their meridians opened. But from the aura of the 3 people, it can be judged that the 3 of them definitely have extraordinary power. They are not practitioners, but they have power similar to spiritual energy. Where do they get this power? At this time, a sexy woman with blonde hair and blue eyes standing not far from Lu Chuan looked at the 3 men on the stage excitedly. Her eyes were almost drawn, and she said without hesitation, "The 3 of them are so manly. I like this. I really want to be ridden by them." Lu Chuan couldn't help turning his head to look at the woman, thinking to himself, "Are women abroad so open?" Nangang Duodo couldn't help but look at the woman, blushing slightly, and then secretly glanced at Lu Chuan. Chen Yilong smiled with satisfaction at the reaction of the crowd, and then said with the 3 people, "Let's start the performance." The yellow-haired man was the first to stand up. He clapped his hands, and immediately several men came over with a 2-meter-long steel bar as thick as an arm. It was enough to see how terrifying its weight was from the fact that several strong adult men had to work together to lift the steel bar. After the men came to the front of the stage, they did not gently put the steel bar down, but let go of it together, letting the steel bar fall on the stage. With a bang, the steel bar smashed through the bottom plate of the stage. They wanted to tell everyone in this way that this steel bar was not a prop, but a real steel bar with an extremely terrifying weight. Everyone was curious about this scene, wanting to know what the yellow-haired man was going to perform. The yellow-haired man walked to the place where the steel bar fell, put his hand into the long hole that was smashed on the floor, and then suddenly exerted force and actually lifted the steel bar up. Everyone exclaimed immediately, praising the yellow-haired man for his infinite strength. This was not the end. After the yellow-haired man lifted the steel bar, he started to play with it in his hands. The steel bar, which seemed extremely heavy in the eyes of the crowd, was like a weightless stick in the hands of the yellow-haired man, and he played with it in various ways. Finally, the yellow-haired man held the steel bar in both hands, and held it horizontally in front of him. After a loud shout, the terrifying power in his body burst out, and then he actually folded the steel bar in half. Everyone who saw this scene was dumbfounded and gasped. Even Lu Chuan was a little surprised. After all, it was a steel bar as thick as an arm. In order to face it, in addition to the strength far beyond ordinary people, it also required amazing explosive power. The strength and explosive power possessed by this yellow-haired man could almost catch up with the strength of the 9th grade saint among the warriors. After folding the steel bar in half, the yellow-haired man retreated, and the red-haired man stood in front of everyone. After seeing the terrifying power of the yellow-haired man, everyone became very curious about the abilities of the red-haired man, and wanted to know what kind of shock he would bring to everyone. The red-haired man glanced at everyone, his mouth curled up, then he raised his hand, and snapped his fingers, and a raging flame burned on his palm. At this time, a staff member pushed up a few scarecrows, and arranged them in a row. The red-haired man raised his hand and waved, and one of the scarecrows burned directly. Then he condensed a ball of fire in his palm, and threw it at the remaining scarecrows. The fireball exploded directly, igniting the scarecrows, and blowing them to pieces. All the guests present were shocked. They didn't expect that this red-haired man could control the fire. However, some people thought that this was an effect achieved through special means, and it could not really prove that this red-haired man could control the fire. However, the next second, the red-haired man snapped his fingers again, and this time a raging flame burst out of his body, turning him into a fireman in an instant, shocking many people so much that their jaws almost dropped. The fireman jumped directly off the stage and walked towards the crowd. The terrifying flames and high temperature scared people to get out of the way. Now no one dared to doubt that this was a manufactured effect. After all, no matter how advanced the special effects are nowadays, it is impossible for a person to walk around safely when his whole body is on fire. The red-haired man put away the flames. His upper body clothes had been burned clean, but his pants were intact. It can be seen that they were made of special materials to withstand high temperatures. He jumped back on the stage and stood next to the yellow-haired man. Lu Chuan looked at the red-haired man thoughtfully. He saw that the flames controlled by this man came out from his body. He could also control flames, but that was because he swallowed the true fire of the sun, and the flames of this man were like directly converting the power in his body into flames. This method also exists in the cultivation world, but it is generally a natural supernatural power. He couldn't understand why a white man would have such a method. He fell into deep thought, and at the same time, wanted to see what kind of ability the last green-haired man had. The green-haired man came to the stage, looked at everyone, and said with a smile, "Everyone, my ability is mental control. I can control other people's consciousness, and make them obey any order I give. Because I need the cooperation of others to show my ability, I will randomly select one of the guests to be my partner to perform for everyone. I hope the selected friend can cooperate." Then he scanned the whole audience and finally set his eyes on Nangang Duodo. The green-haired man bowed to her and said with a smile, "This beautiful lady, are you willing to cooperate with me?" Chapter 491 Nangang Duodo's thoughts. Nangang Duodo was marveling at the red-haired man's ability to control fire, and felt that, if this guy was used in war, he would be a terrifying humanoid weapon. After hearing the green-haired man say that he wanted her to go on stage to cooperate with the performance, she showed obvious surprise on her face, pointed at herself and asked, "Me?" The green-haired man smiled and said, "Yes, beautiful lady, it's you." Chen Yulong made a begging gesture to Nangang Duodo in the corner of the stage, hoping that she would cooperate. Nangang Duodo saw Chen Yulong begging her, and thought about the promise she made to him to cooperate with the performance if she was chosen, so she had to nod and say, "Okay then." It just so happened that she also wanted to feel what the so-called mental control felt like, and whether it was really as magical as the green-haired man said. Then she stood up and went to the stage. After everyone saw that the person who went up was the eldest daughter of the Nangang family, they immediately felt that there must be nothing fishy about this performance. After all, Nangang Duodo's identity was there, and it was impossible for her to be a shill for others. If she was really mentally controlled by the green-haired man, it meant that the green-haired man really had this kind of heaven-defying ability. After the green-haired man saw Nangang Duodo come on stage, he bowed to her gentlemanly, and then said, "Miss, no matter what you feel later, please don't be afraid, it's a normal reaction. I won't hurt you." Nangang Duodo nodded. The green-haired man immediately released a green light, which wrapped around Nangang Duodo. Lu Chuan observed, and found that the green light released by the green-haired man contained a very strong mental power, which was indeed enough to control other people's minds. In addition to controlling other people's minds, this green-haired man must have mastered the means of mental attack. Compared with the abilities shown by the two people before, it is obvious that his ability is the most powerful. After all, in the era when practitioners are almost extinct, even martial arts masters who have achieved very impressive achievements in martial arts have no means to resist mental attacks. No matter how strong you are, the opponent only needs to attack your mind to instantly turn you into a useless person. Only when encountering a practitioner like Lu Chuan, this mental attack will lose its effect. However, the green-haired man was obviously not a cultivator. He had this ability, more like awakening some kind of innate magical power. Not only him, but the three supernatural powers on the stage all belonged to this category. Innate magical powers could not be awakened for no reason. They must be stimulated by external factors. This made Lu Chuan more curious about where the abilities of these three supernatural powers came from. After Nangang Duodo was wrapped by the green power, her consciousness began to disperse instantly, and her eyes lost their spirit. The green-haired man snapped his fingers and said to Nangang Duodo, "Miss, there is a bed in front of you. Please lie down and sleep now." Nangang Duodo immediately lay on the ground obediently, with a happy smile on her face, closed her eyes and fell asleep, as if she was really sleeping on the bed. "Get up," the green-haired man said. Nangang Duodo stood up immediately. "Say hello to everyone." Nangang Duodo stretched out her hand and smiled and greeted everyone. "Tell me a secret in your heart," Nangang Duodo said without hesitation. "I like a man who already has a girlfriend, but I still Can't help thinking about him and want to snatch him from him. Even if I can't be his official girlfriend, I'm willing to have something with him in private. Although this idea makes me feel ashamed, the feeling is very exciting, and I want to experience it. Everyone immediately began to exclaim, and now they completely believed that Nangang Duodo was mentally controlled. They didn't expect that the well-educated and cultured eldest lady of the Nangang family, who always appeared in the public eye with a high-handed attitude, actually had such a dirty idea of wanting to have an affair with someone else's boyfriend in her heart, which really shocked everyone. Chen Yiling in the corner looked at Nangang Duodo with a sneer on his face, muttering, "I didn't expect that your heart is so vulgar. The coldness you usually show in front of me is just pretending. It seems that I have to develop your attributes in this aspect tonight. Compared with you who are high and mighty, I want to see you being slutty." Lu Chuan frowned. He was sure that Nangang Duodo was indeed controlled by the mind, but the questions asked by the green-haired man were really offensive. He made up his mind that if the other party asked these things involving privacy again, he would stop him. The green-haired man smiled and said, "Everyone, what I said just now was what I controlled Miss Nangang to say. This is not a true thoughts. This is just a way for me to show my ability to control my mind. Please don't misunderstand Miss Nangang." When everyone heard this, they all showed a look of disappointment on their faces. Obviously, compared to Nangang Duodo being controlled to say these words, they would rather this was Nangang Duodo's true thoughts in her heart. No matter what level it is, contrast is always what people want to see the most. The cold goddess likes to be humiliated in private, the gentle lady likes to be cursed by others, and the noble and cultured lady likes to have an affair with a wild man in private. These are things that people like to see. Lu Chuan saw the green-haired man help Nangang Duodo to smooth things over, and felt relieved. It seems that the other party is not such a tactless person. But then again, I didn't expect Miss Nangang to have such an idea in her heart. I don't know how outstanding the man she likes must be to make the eldest lady of the Nangang family have such an impulse. At the same time, at the edge of the venue, two women with extraordinary looks were also paying attention to the situation on the stage. The two of them are one big and one small, with different shapes, but both have infinite charm. The big one is sexy and charming, with slightly curly long hair draped over her shoulders and red lips slightly parted, exuding charming temptation. The small one is exquisite, youthful and lively, and her innocent smile exudes a fresh breath, showing elegance and playfulness in every move. The two of them were like fairies, shining in the crowd, and making it hard to look away. The younger woman was none other than Beihu, the member of the law enforcement who wanted to arrest Lu Chuan. In the past, she had always worn the uniform of the law enforcement, which covered her figure and appearance, and even made it difficult to distinguish between men and women. Lu Chuan certainly could not imagine that the law enforcement member who wanted to arrest him was such a beautiful woman. The older woman who looked sexy, charming and feminine was Beihu's master, Yujiro. The two came here today to investigate the recent frequent incidents of innocent girls being abducted, violated and brutally killed by people with special abilities. Chapter 492 Beautiful Master and Disciple. Based on the clues left at the crime scenes of the murdered girls, we can basically determine that one of the perpetrators is extremely strong and possesses extremely terrifying destructive power, and another can create fire out of thin air and create explosions comparable to bombs. The abilities displayed by the two guys just now completely meet these characteristics. The only thing that makes us puzzled is that before the murders, the murdered girls almost all voluntarily followed the criminals away, but in the end they were all raped and killed without exception. This is the difficulty that has prevented us from solving these cases. Now seeing this guy with the ability of mind control, I basically understand why those girls voluntarily followed those criminals. They must have been under mind control and were unable to control themselves. We have extracted DNA from a total of 4 people from those girls. It can be basically confirmed that 3 of them are the 3 superpowers performing on the stage now. As long as we get their DNA for comparison, we can confirm whether they are the murderers. Now the only thing I'm not sure about is who the 4th murderer is. Judging from the fact that these people work for Chen Yiling, the 4th person is very likely the eldest son of the Chen family. Disciple, what do you think? Yujiro analyzed the current situation and asked Behu for his opinion. But Behu ignored her and stared blankly at a figure standing in the front, a little absent-minded. Disciple, Yujiro called again. Behu finally reacted and quickly retracted his gaze, saying, I think so too. That Chen Yulong is a big suspect. Yujiro looked at Behu with some suspicion and asked, what were you looking at just now? Behu said with some guilt, no, nothing. I just felt that the guy's back was a little familiar. Maybe I was seeing things wrong. Yujiro looked in the direction Behu was looking just now and asked, the man who was standing next to Miss Nangang just now. Behu nodded. A teasing smile suddenly appeared on Yujiro's face, and she said, could that guy be the man who kept you awake at night? I saw Miss Nangang standing very close to him just now. The relationship between the two is not ordinary. My dear disciple, if your love rival is Miss Nangang, you may have a hard time dealing with her. Behu's face suddenly turned red, and he quickly argued, Master, what are you talking about? I'm just unwilling to give up on that bastard Luchuan. I failed to catch him at the beginning, and later he became so powerful and made meritorious services, so I have no reason to catch him. I just don't like him in my heart. How could I have those kinds of thoughts about him? Besides, he must still be in China now. The man in front just looks a bit like him from the back. Although I admit that he is indeed very outstanding, he will definitely not be favored by Miss Nangang. How could I be a love rival of Miss Nangang? As soon as she finished speaking, Luchuan in front turned his head with a sense of sympathy and looked towards her and Julinglong with a hint of confusion in his eyes. Behu had never shown her true face in front of Luchuan, so Luchuan didn't know what she looked like. He just felt that someone was staring at him, so he turned his head to take a look. When he saw that there were two beautiful women, he felt strange and showed a confused expression. He thought it was his illusion, so he just took a look and turned his head back. Behu was shocked when he saw Luchuan's face. It's really him. Why did he come here? Yujiro immediately showed a strong curiosity and said, is he really your lover? It seems that you are really going to be a rival, in love with Miss Nangang. Master. Behu blushed and looked at Yujiro angrily, as if he had been slandered, and he was eager to prove that he didn't have such thoughts. Yujiro giggled non-stop and said, okay, I won't joke with you anymore, but I think that guy is pretty good. He looks pretty energetic. Behu said angrily, since Master likes him, why don't you become Miss Nangang's rival in love? Yujiro immediately looked at Behu with a reproachful look and said, what nonsense. Do you want me, an old cow, to eat tender grass? Behu muttered in a low voice, anyway, you are so old and have never been in love. You are not an old cow, you are more like an old girl. What did you say? Yujiro glared at Behu. Behu immediately squeezed out a flattering smile, took Yujiro's arm, and said, it's nothing. Master, let's think about how to get the hair of those three guys and test whether their DNA is consistent with the one we extracted. At this time, the performance on the stage was coming to an end. After the green-haired man controlled Nangang Duodo to give some simple instructions, he stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers. With a snap, Nangang Duodo's eyes suddenly regained clarity and consciousness returned to normal. She looked around with some doubts and then looked at the audience below the stage. Seeing that everyone's faces were filled with deep shock and admiration, she murmured, what did I just do? The green-haired man smiled and said, beautiful lady, you have just been successfully controlled by my mind and did many things according to my orders, but don't worry, I asked you to do only the simplest things, and I definitely did not offend you. The audience below the stage can testify for me. Nangang Duodo nodded and asked, then can I go down? The green-haired man smiled and nodded, saying, okay, thank you for your cooperation, beautiful lady, I hope we can meet again. When he said this, an invisible force was released from his body, which directly hit the position of Nangang Duodo's eyebrows. Nangang Duodo's eyes were stunned for a moment, then nodded to the green-haired man and said, okay. The green-haired man showed a playful smile on his face, and then planned to use the invisible force on Nangang Duodo again. It was obvious that he was giving orders to Nangang Duodo, but this kind of order could only be given one at a time, so he needed to release the power multiple times to achieve the desired effect. Lu Chuan in the audience noticed this situation immediately. He realized that the green-haired man was using his ability of mental control to influence Nangang Duodo's thoughts. Seeing that the other party was going to continue, he quickly jumped onto the stage and released his spiritual power to resist the second force released by the green-haired man. The green-haired man was immediately shocked. Since he gained the ability of mental control, this was the first time he encountered someone who could interrupt the mental power he released. Lu Chuan looked at the green-haired man with a cold face and asked, "What did you do to her?" Chapter 493, Fighting Against the Superpower. The green-haired man pretended not to understand and said, "Sir, I don't know what you are talking about." Lu Chuan's aura suddenly exploded, and he asked again, "What did you do to her?" The green-haired man frowned, feeling a strong threat from Lu Chuan. The yellow-haired and red-haired men also realized that something was wrong, and they immediately came over and stood behind the green-haired man, looking at Lu Chuan aggressively. The people in the audience didn't know what was going on, and they were all confused. Nangang Duodo was also a little confused. She didn't feel that the green-haired man did anything to her, and didn't know why Lu Chuan suddenly acted like this. Chen Yilong frowned, walked over here quickly, stopped in front of Lu Chuan, and said, "Brother, there must be some misunderstanding here. He just showed everyone his ability. How could he do anything to Duodo? You worry too much." Lu Chuan glanced at him and said, "You can hide it from others, but you can't hide it from me. This green-haired monster is your subordinate, and you have impure intentions towards Duodo. He must have done something to Duodo under your instructions, right?" Chen Yilong's face sank, and he said angrily, "Don't slander people here. Boy, I'm polite to you for Duodo's sake. Don't take yourself too seriously." Nangang Duodo tugged at Lu Chuan and said, "Could it be a misunderstanding? I don't feel anything wrong. Let's just forget it." Lu Chuan said, "The green-haired monster exerted an invisible force on you. He can control your mind. If you don't figure out the function of this force, I'm afraid there will be endless troubles." Nangang Duodo frowned immediately, looked at Chen Yilong, and said, "Is what he said true?" Chen Yilong said, "Duodo, don't listen to his nonsense here. I think he is just jealous of my subordinate's outstanding abilities, so he deliberately makes trouble for me. This kind of guy is not worthy of you at all. I advise you to break up with him as soon as possible." Lu Chuan shook his head and said, "Since you don't want to say it, don't blame me for being rude." Chen Yilong said with disdain, "Boy, this is my territory. It's not your turn to run wild. Since you insist on making trouble for me, I can only let you suffer a little." After that, he gave the three superpowers a look. The three people understood, and the yellow-haired man showed an excited smile on his face and said, "I can deal with this guy alone. Just watch." After that, he rushed towards Lu Chuan. Every step he took would create a deep pit on the stage, which was enough to show how terrifying the power contained in his body was. Seeing this, Lu Chuan immediately released a force to send Nangang Duodo to the bottom of the stage, and turned to look at the yellow-haired man. Everyone in the audience didn't expect to see a battle in addition to the performance of the superpowers. They immediately focused their attention to see if Lu Chuan could deal with these three superpowers. "I feel that this guy's definitely not a match for the superpowers. The abilities they just showed are too powerful. How can ordinary people be their opponents?" "I don't think so. Didn't you notice that the guy just sent Miss Nangang off the stage for some reason? And he also saw the superpowers abilities. He dared to do this now. He must have the confidence." Yu Linglang saw Lu Chuan come on stage to question the green-haired man, and she became more and more certain that the four murderers she was looking for were Chen Yilong and the three superpowers. And it is basically certain that their latest target is Nangang Duodo. Lu Chuan must have seen what the green-haired man did to Nangang Duodo to be like this. She was a little surprised at Lu Chuan's ability, because she didn't notice anything unusual just now. Seeing that the three superpowers were about to attack Lu Chuan, she also showed a trace of worry and said, "The power of that yellow-haired guy is terrifying. Even I may not be able to handle it. Can your little lover really handle it?" Bei, who on the side, said, "Master, you must not underestimate him. I didn't think he was that powerful before, and even thought that my talent was not worse than his, but he proved with facts that he and I are not at the same level at all." After saying that, she realized that she seemed to have tacitly agreed to something just now, and her face suddenly blushed. She secretly glanced at Yujiro and found that she didn't notice, so she was relieved. On the stage, the yellow-haired man rushed in front of Luchuan. The power released from him had reached the point visible to the naked eye. The momentum carried by these powers oppressed those who were closer to the stage. "Taste my fist." The yellow-haired man suddenly punched in front of Luchuan with a momentum that was quite destructive. Chen Yilong sneered at the scene and murmured, "I was just worried about how to get rid of this trouble of yours. Since you are looking for death on your own initiative, don't blame me for being rude." Luchuan looked at the yellow-haired man's fist approaching him and just raised his hand lightly and grabbed the other's fist. The terrifying power contained in it acted on Luchuan as if it was just tickling him, and it didn't even make Luchuan's figure shift a little. The yellow-haired man's face changed wildly. "This is impossible," Luchuan said lightly. "Your strength is not weak, but it's a pity that it's much worse than mine." As soon as he finished speaking, he grabbed the yellow-haired man's hand and pulled it down hard. The yellow-haired man only felt a force far beyond his imagination, which pulled his body down and smashed it. Bang! The yellow-haired man's body directly smashed through the stage and hit the concrete floor below, creating a deep pit, and the whole person fainted. Everyone felt the ground shaking, like an earthquake, and their faces showed an expression of disbelief. So scary. His power is even scarier than that superpower. Yujiro looked at this scene with a shocked expression and murmured, "He is so powerful." Beihu showed a smug look on his face, and she knew that Luchuan would not let her down. Chen Yilong was dumbfounded. He never expected that his subordinate who was good at strength could not beat Luchuan in strength, and was even solved by one move. The red-haired man and the green-haired man also changed their faces. The two looked at each other, and the red-haired man said, "It seems that this guy's not as simple as we thought. I will deal with him, and you assist me. I don't believe he can deal with the two of us." After that, flames burned on both of his palms, and then he walked towards Luchuan. "Stupid Chinese, no matter how strong you are, you can't resist the burning of the fire. Today is your death." Luchuan glanced at him and couldn't help but curl up the corners of his mouth. "Playing with fire in front of me? You're still a little naive." After saying that, he stretched out two fingers, and a small flame appeared out of thin air at his fingertips. Chapter 494, easily solved. The red-haired man was stunned for a moment when he saw the small flame released by Luchuan. Then he burst into laughter. "Idiot. Do you think the flame you made can compete with my flame? I find that you Chinese are always so blind and stupid." As soon as he finished speaking, he noticed that the flame on his palm began to tremble violently, and the momentum contained in it suddenly wilted, just like a subject seeing an emperor. The gap between the status made them tremble, and it was difficult to exert any power. Luchuan took a few steps towards the red-haired man. The flame on the red-haired man's palm seemed to be frightened by something, and went out instantly. The red-haired man was full of disbelief, and wanted to summon the flame again, but found that, no matter how hard he tried, the flame he had summoned casually would not come out. He suddenly panicked, looked at Luchuan, and shouted, "What did you do to me? Why did my flame fail?" Luchuan smiled and said, "Because they know what kind of existence is standing in front of them now, unlike you, who don't know it, when death is imminent." The red-haired man felt a sense of crisis in his heart. Looking at the flame on Luchuan's fingertips, he shouted, "This is impossible. I don't believe that you can make the flame in my body ineffective with this little flame. This is just your trick." Luchuan said lightly, "I only release this little flame because it is enough to deal with you." Then he flicked his finger, and the flame fell on the red-haired man. The red-haired man snorted coldly and was about to extinguish the flame. But when his palm hit the flame was not only not extinguished, but instantly burned through his palm. Then the terrifying flame rose up and directly wrapped the red-haired man, turning him into a fireman again. But compared to before, he no longer had that calmness, but was burned and screaming, heartbroken. Everyone gasped as they watched the red-haired man being burned by the fire. At this time, Yu Jiao came to Lu Chuan and said, "Can you spare his life?" Lu Chuan looked at Yu Jiao for a few times and asked, "Who are you?" Yu Jiao took out her ID and said, "I'm the captain of the 5th team directly under the law enforcement headquarters. I came here today to investigate the recent frequent incidents of innocent girls being raped and killed by people with special abilities. The 3 people with special abilities who performed just now are very suspicious. I need their DNA for verification, so please spare their lives." Because Lu Chuan and the 3 people with special abilities fought on the stage, which was basically equivalent to a ring fight, and those 3 guys were people with special abilities, not ordinary people, so even if Lu Chuan beat them to death, the law enforcement had no right to interfere. At this time, Bei who also came over, looked at Lu Chuan nervously, and said, "Please, cooperate with us." Lu Chuan looked at Bei Hu and felt a familiar breath on this beautiful girl, but he couldn't remember where he had seen her for a while. Bei Hu had just told Yu Linglong that Lu Chuan had never seen her appearance, so he asked her not to expose herself. Seeing that the certificate in Yu Jiao's hand did not look fake, Lu Chuan had no choice but to nod and take back the sun's true fire from the red-haired man, a black and charred person with a burnt smell and skin that had been basically burned clean, who looked a little scary, appeared in front of everyone. Many women present were scared and screamed by the guy's appearance at this time. Fortunately, this guy had played with fire before and was more resistant to burning. In addition, Lu Chuan stopped in time, which left him with a breath. "You damn thing, I'll kill you." At this time, the green-haired man finally condensed and completed his mental attack method, releasing a force with terrifying mental fluctuations to attack Lu Chuan. Everyone present felt dizzy in an instant, as if they were about to have a mental breakdown. Lu Chuan turned his head to look at the green-haired man. His eyes instantly turned dark gold, and then he glared at him. An invisible force appeared and directly bounced back the green-haired man's mental attack. The green-haired man immediately fell to the ground with his head in his hands and wailed, as if he was in great pain. Yu Jiao and Bei Hu looked at this scene in disbelief. They didn't expect that Lu Chuan only glared at the green-haired man and resisted the other party's terrible mental attack. It was really incredible. Yu Jiao did not hesitate. This was a good opportunity to collect the hair or skin tissue of the 3 people. After looking at Bei Hu, she immediately started to act. Lu Chuan walked up to Chen Yilong and asked again, "What did you ask your subordinate to do to Duodo? If you don't tell me, your fate will be the same as those 3. Chen Yilong looked at Lu Chuan with fear on his face. He didn't expect that the 3 powerful subordinates he was proud of would be so easily killed by Lu Chuan. He knew very well that he couldn't fight this guy head on, otherwise he would be the one in trouble. He thought for a while and said, "I don't know what you are talking about. I'm the eldest son of the Chen family. I have been upright all my life. I have never done anything wrong, and I will never do anything that harms the world. So what you said about what I ordered my subordinates to do to Duodo is completely slanderous." Yu Jiao, who had collected the DNA tissues of the 3 superpowers, came over and showed her ID to Chen Yilong, saying coldly, "Chen Yilong, now you are colluding with others to abduct innocent girls and rape and kill them. We need some of your hair to verify the DNA. I hope you can cooperate." Chen Yilong suddenly felt like a lump in his throat, and he completely lost the confidence that he had just said that he was upright. Lu Chuan smiled and glanced at him, saying, "Is this what you call being above board and never doing anything that hurts the world?" Chen Yilong gritted his teeth and shouted, "I have never done the things you said. You must have made a mistake." Yu Jiao walked up to him, stretched out her hand, and pulled out a few of his hairs, saying, "Whether we made a mistake or not, we will know after the DNA comparison. Before that, please cooperate." After that, she gave the hairs to Bei Hu and said, "Go back now and let our people do the identification. I will watch them here." Bei Hu nodded immediately, took the body tissues of the 4 people, and left here quickly. Chen Yilong suddenly panicked. Although he and his 3 men would clean up the scene every time they committed a crime, the law enforcers were not vegetarians. Once they came to the door, they must have obtained evidence through some special means. He immediately took out his mobile phone and was about to call his father for help. But as soon as he unlocked it, the phone was snatched away by Lu Chuan next to him. Chen Yilong instantly got furious and shouted at Lu Chuan, "Give me back my phone." Lu Chuan looked at him and smiled, saying, "Why are you in such a hurry? Could it be that there is evidence of your crime hidden in this phone?" Yu Jiao's eyes lit up when she heard this, and she immediately controlled Chen Yiling and said to Lu Chuan, "Check his phone." She looked at Chen Yiling and said coldly, "I hope you don't have the habit of taking videos when doing certain things." Chapter 495 Implantation Concept. Chen Yiling jumped up and down anxiously, trying to break free from Yu Jiao's control, but Yu Jiao was a master of the Saint Realm, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't break free. "That's my personal property, you have no right to view it. I'm going to sue you for illegally peeping into other people's privacy, and I'm also going to sue you for illegally robbing other people's property." Chen Yiling shouted hysterically. Lu Chuan ignored him at all, but opened the album on his phone, and then saw a lot of photos and videos of young girls being bullied. Seeing those girls being tortured and desperate, Lu Chuan's face became more gloomy, and a fierce murderous aura emerged from his body. Then he actually grabbed Chen Yiling's neck, and had the urge to strangle this guy to death. Seeing Lu Chuan like this, Yu Jiao had already guessed what was in this phone. She looked at Lu Chuan and said, "Don't be impulsive." Lu Chuan handed the phone directly to Yu Jiao and said, "What he did is worse than an animal. It's enough to be sentenced to death. I will kill him now. It should be okay, right?" Yu Jiao took the phone, glanced at the content on it, frowned, and then said to Lu Chuan, "Although this guy's not a human, to convict him, you have to follow the internal procedures of the law enforcers. He is an ordinary person. If you kill him on impulse, I will take them away today, and I'm afraid I will have to take you away too." Lu Chuan took a deep breath and asked, "What if I beat him up to vent my anger?" Yu Jiao was silent for a while, then turned around and said, "I didn't see anything." Lu Chuan didn't hesitate, and immediately beat Chen Yiling. The people in the audience didn't know what happened. They only knew that a law enforcer suddenly appeared, and then Lu Chuan beat Chen Yiling, leaving them confused. Chen Yiling was beaten so hard that he screamed and asked Yu Jiao to stop Lu Chuan, otherwise he would go to the law enforcement headquarters to complain about her. But Yu Jiao pretended not to hear it, and kept turning her back to them, pretending nothing had happened. Lu Chuan kept beating Chen Yiling to death, then stopped and looked at him and said, "I don't understand why there are beasts like you in this world. If you meet me in private, I promise to make you live a life worse than death." Chen Yiling said stubbornly, "Those photos and videos have nothing to do with me. Someone deliberately put them in my phone. You beat me for no reason, and have violated the rules set by the law enforcement. I demand that you be arrested immediately." Lu Chuan curled his lips, and didn't take his words to heart at all. After slapping Chen Yiling again, he threw him to the ground. At this time, the green-haired man stared at Lu Chuan, and then released an invisible force, flying towards the center of Lu Chuan's eyebrows. Obviously, this force is the same as the force he just hit into Nangang Duodo's eyebrows. When the force was about to approach Lu Chuan's eyebrows, Lu Chuan felt it in his heart and immediately released the power of his soul to intercept the force. After careful observation, he finally determined that this was a power to implant concepts into the subconscious mind of a person's brain. For example, a person would feel sick when eating meat, since he was a child, so he would never eat meat. However, as long as this method is used to implant the concept of "you like to eat meat" in his subconscious mind, he will really like to eat meat very much, and he will not feel sick, no matter how much he eats meat in the future. In the cultivation world, this is not a powerful method, and it is even a bit useless. After all, the physical body and soul of the cultivators are cultivated together. As long as someone uses such a method on them, they will feel it in their hearts and quickly counterattack. But for ordinary people, this is definitely a terrifying ability. After all, directly implanting concepts in the subconscious mind is equivalent to changing the deepest thoughts of a person's brain, which will make them believe in the concepts implanted by outsiders, firmly believe that this is the most real thought in their hearts, and act according to these thoughts. If you implant the concept of "you are a natural killer" in a good person's mind, then he will be convinced that he is a killer and commit crimes. If you only rely on the investigative methods of modern society, it is impossible to find out that this person is controlled by others. Everyone will only think that this guy is hiding too deep and uses a good person to disguise the real darkness in his heart. The concept that the green-haired man wants to implant in Lu Chuan's mind is save me, Chen Xiao, and the other two companions now. Lu Chuan immediately rushed to the green-haired man, picked him up, and said, "What concept did you implant in Nangang Duodo's mind? Tell me quickly, otherwise I will make you live a life worse than death." The green-haired man looked at Lu Chuan with a look of astonishment, as if he didn't expect that the other party could actually see that the power he released was to implant concepts in other people's minds. It was only at this time that he realized that no matter what means he used, he could not be the opponent of this guy. He showed a trace of despair on his face, then smiled and said, "Even if you kill me, I will not tell you what concept I implanted into her subconscious, unless you rescue the four of us right now." Lu Chuan could see that, even if he used some cruel means on this guy, he would not be able to tell the concept implanted in Nangang Duodo's mind, so he did not intend to waste time, loosened his hand, and threw it to the ground. Then he also released a force and injected it into the mind of the green-haired man. The green-haired man was terrified and asked, "What did you put in my head?" Lu Chuan did not hide it at all and said, "In 3 days, your brain will become a mess and you will become a complete idiot. From now on, you will live in the world like a walking corpse." The green-haired man panicked and said quickly, Let me go. As long as you let me go, I will tell you what concept I implanted in Miss Nangang's mind." Lu Chuan curled his lips and said, "No need. Even if I don't know what concept you implanted, I have a way to resolve this trouble. You scum must be punished." He did not go to Chen Yilong to ask what concept the green-haired man implanted in Nangang Duodo's mind. Doing so would undoubtedly be a waste of time. Not long after, Beihu returned here with the identification results and a team of law enforcement personnel. After reading it, Yu Jiao immediately ordered Chen Yilong and the 3 dying superpowers to be arrested, and also announced the crimes committed by Chen Yilong and the other 4 to everyone present. After hearing what Chen Yilong did, everyone was shocked. They never thought that the high and mighty young master of the Chen family would have such a perverted hobby. With his status and financial resources, he could get any woman he wanted through formal means, but he chose to go down the path of crime. Nangang Duodo didn't expect Chen Yilong to be such a pervert. She felt a deep hatred for this guy. At the same time, she was also glad that she brought Lu Chuan with her today, otherwise she might be Chen Yilong's next target. Yu Jiao and Beihu took the members of the law enforcers and took Chen Yilong and the other 4 away from here. Before leaving, Chen Yilong shouted at Lu Chuan fiercely, "I'm the eldest son of the Chen family, and my father is the head of the Chen family. You caused me to be arrested by the law enforcers, and he will never let you go." Lu Chuan ignored him at all, but walked up to Nangang Duodo and said with a serious expression, "Your troubles have not been completely solved. Come with me." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 496, A Single Man and a Single Woman. Nangang Duodo showed a surprised expression on her face and hurriedly caught up with Lu Chuan and asked, "Haven't that bastard Chen Yilong and his 3 men been arrested? What trouble do I have?" Lu Chuan immediately explained to Nangang Duodo that the green-haired man could implant concepts in other people's subconscious minds. After listening, Nangang Duodo was surprised and said, "So you found that the guy had implanted concepts in my mind, so you suddenly went to the stage to question him?" Lu Chuan nodded and said, "At first I didn't know what he did to you, until he also tried to implant concepts in my mind. I figured out what was going on." Nangang Duodo suddenly panicked, looked at Lu Chuan pleadingly, and asked, Then do you know what concepts he implanted in my mind?" For some reason, under the cover of this unknown fear, she felt that only Lu Chuan could bring her a sense of security. Lu Chuan shook his head and said, "He has successfully implanted that concept into your mind. This concept has been integrated into your subconscious. I think it is like looking for a needle in a haystack to find it." Nangang Duodo's expression was suddenly full of worry, worried that the green-haired man had implanted some perverted concept into her. "But," Lu Chuan continued. Nangang Duodo thought that Lu Chuan had some other ways, and hope rose in her heart again, and hurriedly asked, "But what?" But Lu Chuan said, but from the things that Chen Yiling and others did to rape innocent girls, we can roughly judge the general direction of the concept that guy implanted in your mind. Nangang Duodo's expression stagnated, and she immediately understood what Lu Chuan meant. Chen Yiling, the beast, just wanted to get her body. If so, then the concept implanted in her mind is nothing more than a few. There was a touch of despair on her face. She thought Lu Chuan would bring her some hope, but she didn't expect that this guy just told her the situation he might encounter next. Isn't this even more frustrating? Then, should I consider what to do after my death first? Seeing her like this, Lu Chuan couldn't help laughing and said, don't be too pessimistic. Since Chen Yiling has his eyes on you, he will definitely not let his men implant concepts in your mind that will harm your life. Nangang Duodo murmured, but even if my life won't be harmed, they will definitely be those dirty concepts that will make me too ashamed to continue living in this world. If I really become the kind of person he wants, I might as well die. Lu Chuan said, don't worry, as long as this concept implanted in your mind begins to take effect, I will have a way to capture this concept and let it overflow from your mind. Really? Nangang Duodo's eyes lit up. Lu Chuan nodded and said, but we don't know what this concept is at the moment, so we need to find a relatively safe place, preferably with only the two of us. I will keep an eye on you until that concept prompts you to take action. Nangang Duodo thought about it and said a little embarrassedly, then, let's go to the hotel. I'll ask someone to book me a presidential suite. Okay. The two walked towards the hotel together. In the presidential suite, Lu Chuan sat on the sofa and said, let's wait here first. Their goal should be to take you down tonight. If nothing unexpected happens, that concept will work tonight. Nangang Duodo nodded and sat down on the other side of the sofa. This situation was nothing to Lu Chuan. He calmed down and chose to practice to kill time. But Nangang Duodo was a little restrained at this time. After all, a single man and a single woman in the same room would inevitably give rise to some thoughts in people's hearts. She felt that her heartbeat was much faster than usual. In addition, Lu Chuan didn't speak, which made the atmosphere in the room a little ambiguous. What's more, Nangang Duodo had thoughts about Lu Chuan. Both of them are at the hottest age. When they are in the same room with the opposite sex they like very much, they will inevitably expect something to happen. This is true for men and women. Sometimes women's expectations are often stronger than men's. Nangang Duodo secretly glanced at Lu Chuan, thinking, why is he so calm? Doesn't he have any thoughts about me at all? He must want to do something exciting. After all, this is a foreign country. Even if he does something, King C won't find out. He must be having a fierce psychological struggle like me. If he can't help it later, I will give in to him. Maybe I can directly break the concept implanted in my mind. She was thinking wildly, and she moved towards Lu Chuan involuntarily. Lu Chuan noticed Nangang Duodo's abnormality, opened his eyes, and turned his head to look at her, and asked, what's wrong with you? Nangang Duodo's slowly moving body froze instantly, and her face suddenly became red, almost steaming. Then she quickly stood up and said, I'm fine. I'm going to take a shower. Then she quickly ran towards the bathroom. Nangang Duodo muttered, while taking a shower, why does this guy look like he has no intention of that? Is he really just waiting for me to show abnormality so that he can help me solve that problem? She was a little disappointed. She had lived abroad since she was a child and her ideas were relatively open. Otherwise she would not have thought of having an affair with someone else's boyfriend secretly. Of course, this other person's boyfriend was Lu Chuan. If you can't get him, it's also good to get his body. But if I'm too proactive in this kind of thing, wouldn't it make me look too slutty? Oh, it would be great if he was a little bit more vulgar, then I would just be bullied by him. Nangang Duodo muttered, and after taking a shower and drying herself, she reached out to get clothes to put on. But the next second, she hesitated, and her outstretched hand stopped in midair. After hesitating for a few seconds, she took her hand back, wrapped only a bath towel around her body, and then left the bathroom. She came to the living room and saw Lu Chuan still sitting there calmly, without even looking at her. She felt a little angry. Am I so unattractive? She bit her lip, then pretended to trip and threw herself into Lu Chuan's arms. Lu Chuan felt a fragrant and soft body suddenly in his arms and immediately opened his eyes. Nangang Duodo blushed, stared at Lu Chuan with eager eyes, and said, "Yes. I'm sorry, I accidentally fell." Lu Chuan swallowed his saliva when he saw her like this. It's not that Nangang Duodo has no charm, but he didn't want to cause trouble, so he forced himself to enter a meditative state and stay calm from the beginning. But now Nangang Duodo has thrown herself into his arms. If he can still remain calm, then what is the difference between him and a eunuch? He tried to use his spiritual sense to feel Nangang Duodo's state, and a trace of doubt appeared on his face. Strange. There is no sign that the implanted concept in your mind has taken effect. How could it suddenly become like this? Nangang Duodo looked guilty and did not dare to look directly into Lu Chuan's eyes. He thought that the concept did not work, which meant that this was my own idea. Can't you guess what I want to do? At this time, the clock struck 10 o'clock. Nangang Duodo was stunned for a moment, and her eyes suddenly surged with endless lust. She looked at Lu Chuan with eyes that were almost tearing, and then she tore off the bath towel on her body and said, I want you, can I? Chapter 497 Shenzhenkian. Lu Chuan was stunned when he saw the white patch that suddenly appeared in front of him. He even felt dizzy. Nangang Duodo didn't even wait for Lu Chuan to respond, but put her arms around his neck and kissed him wildly. Lu Chuan's breathing became rapid, and the Lang Yang power in his body began to become active. He had no power to resist Nangang Duodo's sudden attack. Nangang Duodo even grabbed Lu Chuan's hand and moved it towards herself, making Lu Chuan's eyes wide open and his mind blank. It was not until Nangang Duodo pulled his pants down that he realized that this might be the concept implanted in Nangang Duodo's mind that began to take effect. So he used his spiritual sense to observe Nangang Duodo's mind again, and soon found an abnormal idea. He released a spiritual power to absorb that idea, and confirmed that this was the concept implanted in Nangang Duodo's mind by the green-haired man. At 10 o'clock tonight, you will become the most lewd woman in the world, accepting everyone who comes, and being as proactive as you can. No wonder she suddenly took the initiative. It was really unbearable. Lu Chuan tried his best to suppress his inner impulse, so as to prevent the situation from developing in an uncontrollable direction. In fact, he still had the idea of making the best of a bad situation. After all, which man could resist a warm and soft jade? But he came here this time for the 400-year-old elixir, and now Nangang Duodo has not taken him to see that friend. If he did it to her first, then one more debt of love would be secondary. If Nangang Duodo didn't take him to see that friend in a fit of anger, he would have come here in vain. So he concentrated his mind, relying on the power of his soul, and directly pulled out the concept in Nangang Duodo's mind. Nangang Duodo was stunned for a moment, and the movement of her mouth and hands stopped. The originally passionate eyes gradually became clear, and she immediately regained normal consciousness. Lu Chuan turned his head, coughed twice, and said, well, I know what the concept implanted in your mind is, which is to make you take the initiative. Don't worry, I have cleared that concept from your mind, and now you are fine. Nangang Duodo only noticed her condition at this time, and her face turned red. Lu Chuan said awkwardly, well, you can get off me. Nangang Duodo had the urge to find a crack in the ground to crawl into quickly, but she thought about it. Even if she didn't have that concept, didn't she want to do that with Lu Chuan? The current situation is simply a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for her. Anyway, it's just a matter of time, and it turns out that Lu Chuan is not without feelings for her, and the reaction is even a little unexpected. She took a deep breath, made up her mind, and didn't get off Lu Chuan, but instead hugged Lu Chuan's neck again, and kissed him again. Lu Chuan's eyes widened, thinking, didn't I just clear the concept implanted in her mind? Could it be that I didn't clear it completely? So he quickly observed Nangang Duodo's state again, but this time he did not find anything abnormal. He quickly separated from Nangang Duodo and said, that guy's means are more powerful than I thought. He may have implanted more than one concept in your mind, but I have only found one so far. Looking at your current state, there must be other concepts, but I can't find any abnormalities. In order not to hurt you, I can only knock you out first. Hearing this, Nangang Duodo quickly said, You misunderstood. There is no concept implanted by others in my head. Just now I took the initiative. Lu Chuan. Nangang Duodo bit her lip shyly and said, I want to try it with you. Don't reject me, okay? Lu Chuan's eyes widened, and for a moment he didn't know what to say. Kingsley was right. This woman was really interested in him. It seems that no matter when, a woman's intuition is the most accurate. If you don't say anything, I'll take it as your consent. Then I'll continue. After saying that, Nangang Duodo continued what he had not finished just now. Lu Chuan did not resist, because he was caught with a handle, and the Langyang power in his body was out of control. What could he do? Apart from sinking into this warm and soft jade, he didn't know what other choices he had. It's another hard night. Lu Chuan sighed, completely let down his guard, and enjoyed the gentle country in front of him. At the same time, in a luxurious manner, a servant ran towards the back garden of the manor with an anxious face. Master, it's bad. Something big has happened. A middle-aged man in a suit, with a Hui-shaped beard and a cold look suddenly appeared in front of the servant, and kicked him to the ground. I said that outsiders are prohibited from entering the back garden. No matter how big the matter is, you can't step in here. Don't you want to die? The middle-aged man said coldly. This person was none other than the head of the overseas Chen family, Chen Yilong's father, Chen Zhenqian. The servant endured the severe pain, stood up from the ground, handed over an arrest warrant, and said with gritted teeth, Master, the young master was arrested by the law enforcers. The evidence is irrefutable. The law enforcers took the young master directly to the headquarters. Now even if we use our connections, we can't save the young master. Chen Zhenqian frowned, took the arrest warrant, and looked at it, and asked, what's going on? The servant immediately told Chen Zhenqian everything that happened at the dance. Then he handed over another document and said, this Lu Chuan is the culprit who caused the young master to be arrested, and the two women who took the young master away, one is Yu Jiao, the captain of the 5th team directly under the law enforcer headquarters, and the other is Bei Hu, who is Yu Jiao's apprentice. Chen Zhenqian stared at the document. He didn't care about Lu Chuan, but when he saw the photos of Yu Jiao and Bei Hu, his eyes lit up. Like Chen Yiling, he is also a sex-hungry ghost. He likes to train those women who are outstanding in appearance, preferably those who are arrogant and have their own principles. It is obvious that Yu Jiao and Bei Hu are very much in line with his appetite. So much so that he doesn't care about Chen Yilong's life or death at all. He tore off the information about Lu Chuan and threw it in front of the servants. He collected the information about Yu Jiao and Bei Hu and said, my army of superpowers will be formed soon. Now is the most critical stage and there can be no mistakes, so let my son suffer for the time being. Once my army of superpowers is formed, I will not care about the law enforcers or this kid at that time. It won't be too late to settle accounts with them then. But these two women dare to catch my son. They are really bold. I must think of a way to punish them. It happens that I have been busy with the army of superpowers recently. I'm under a lot of pressure and need to vent. I think these two women should be able to satisfy my fetishes. Chapter 498 Can't sleep. The next morning, Nangang Duodo got up from the bed and put on her clothes. She looked at Lu Chuan with a guilty conscience and said that, last night, I was impulsive. I'm sorry, but don't worry, I will never tell Kingsley, and you don't have to have any psychological burden. I just want to experience it. Just treat it as a one-night stand. Lu Chuan looked at the red stain on the bed and thought to himself, this is the first time I've seen someone use their first time to have a one-night stand. Aren't you losing too much? But he also understood that Nangang Duodo was an adult and knew what she was doing. Since the other party said so, he naturally couldn't say anything else. He also got dressed and got off the bed, looking at Nangang Duodo and asked, can you take me to see your friend today? Nangang Duodo nodded, then blushed and said, but it's afternoon, I need to rest first. Afternoon. Nangang Duodo, who changed into a beautiful dress, took Lu Chuan to the door of a single-family villa in the wealthy villa area of New York City and pressed the doorbell on the door. The two waited for a while, and the door of the villa opened automatically. Nangang Duodo looked at Lu Chuan and said, come with me. The two passed the yard and entered the villa. Lu Chuan saw a woman lying on the sofa in the living room, wearing only a suspender pajamas, with a tight figure, fair skin, and long white hair, but she was obviously a Chinese. Nangang Duodo saw her like this, and hurried over, and patted her on the butt, saying, "Big lazy bug, hurry up and get up, I'll bring my friends, to help you solve the problem." The woman climbed up lazily and said weakly, "You know my situation, and I don't want to be a lazy bug." Lu Chuan saw the woman's appearance clearly. She was very delicate, and had a round face. Compared with goddesses like Nangang Duodo, she was much cuter. But this woman looked like she had been drained of energy. She didn't look energetic at all. She had a lazy temperament all over her body, as if she would fall asleep at any time. Nangang Duodo introduced Lu Chuan and said, "This is the friend I told you about, Kinyemo." Then she said to Kinyemo, "Momo, this is Lu Chuan. I told you before that he was the one who solved the haunted problem in our ancestral temple. Let him help you see if he can solve your problem." Kinyemo glanced at Lu Chuan and said embarrassedly, "Sorry to bother you. I have been very weak recently. Please forgive me for my poor hospitality." "It's okay." Lu Chuan said he didn't care. "I don't know what trouble Miss Kin encountered. Can you tell me in detail?" Kinyemo sighed helplessly and said, "This is a long story. You sit down and talk. Duodo, go and pour Mr. Lu a cup of tea." Nangang Duodo nodded, and Lu Chuan sat on the sofa opposite Kinyemo. Not long after, Nangang Duodo put the brewed tea on the table. Originally, she wanted to sit next to Kinyemo, but after a little thought, she moved some small ideas, and sat next to Lu Chuan, and was very close to Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan felt a fragrance coming towards him, showing a trace of helplessness. He didn't know what to say, so he looked at Kinyemo, and listened to her story. Nangang Duodo was secretly happy to see that Lu Chuan didn't move to the other side, because she was sitting next to him, and she also listened to Kinyemo's story. It turned out that a year ago, Kinyemo had a minimally invasive nerve surgery because of migraine, but there were some accidents in that operation. Although the doctor in charge of the operation was a world-renowned surgical expert, on the day of the operation, the doctor had performed 3 operations in a row, and was not in the best condition. During the operation, his hand had a slight cramp, which made his hand tremble, and accidentally injured Kinyemo's sleep-related nerve. Although the doctor tried his best to help Kinyemo repair this nerve afterwards, the trauma had become permanent, and could not be reversed at all. The final result was that, although Kinyemo's migraine was cured, she couldn't sleep at all. At first, she thought it was a very cool ability. After all, not having to sleep meant that she would be awake twice as long as others, so that she could do many things while others were sleeping. But it turned out that she was overthinking it. She really couldn't sleep all day, but that didn't mean she could always stay energetic. Not sleeping would only make her tired all over, and she couldn't recover through sleep when she was mentally exhausted, which was even more devastating. In a few days, she became extremely haggard and had the urge to die. At that time, she felt that the happiest thing in the world was to have a good sleep. If this situation were placed on an ordinary person, they would not be able to endure it for long and their bodies would collapse. Fortunately, Kinyemo's background was not simple, and the resources that her family could get were not comparable to those of ordinary people. In addition, the doctor had been trying to help her alleviate this situation, which allowed her to barely maintain it. Her hair also turned white at that time. At first, she thought that she would look old after her hair turned white, but what surprised her was that she actually matched this hair color a bit. After her hair turned white, it looked better, which was also a comfort to her. Although Kinyemo could basically maintain a normal life even without sleeping, relying on some special items found at home, and the careful help of the doctor, her body was still getting worse day by day. She knew that she was just barely surviving by overdrawing her future life. This situation made her desperate, and she even had the idea of committing suicide several times during that time. Fortunately, there is always a way out. When this situation lasted for half a year, Kinyemo's family got a 400-year-old spiritual medicine through some channels. This spiritual medicine is called Yunmen grass. Anyone who is within 3 meters of it will immediately feel sleepy and fall asleep, and at the same time, they will have a high probability of having a good dream. Although Kinyemo's nerves were damaged, she would also feel sleepy and fall into a deep sleep after entering the 3-meter range of Yunmen grass. On the first day she got Yunmen grass, she slept for a whole day and night, ending the mental torture that lasted for half a year. At that time, she really felt that being able to sleep well was the greatest gift from God to her. After having Yunmen grass, Kinyemo's sleep problem was solved, and her life returned to normal. She could sleep soundly every day, and have intoxicating dreams every night. It was not until she dreamed of a handsome man with the scent of grass for a week that she realized that things were developing in a strange direction again. Chapter 499, Yunmen grass. Let me interrupt you. Could this handsome man with the scent of green grass be the Yunmen grass? Lu Chuan asked. Kinyemo glanced at Lu Chuan. A hint of helplessness appeared on her face, and she nodded. Lu Chuan showed a strange look on his face and asked, then I will dare to guess again. Did this handsome man transformed by Yunmen grass fall in love with you in his dream? Kinyemo nodded again. Nangang Duodo looked at Lu Chuan with surprise and asked, how did you know? Lu Chuan smiled and said, I have read some strange novels, and they all say this. Kinyemo sighed and said, what I encountered is much more bizarre than those in strange novels. She continued to tell the story. At first, she dreamed of the handsome man in her dream, and she didn't think it was strange. She thought she was having a spring in her heart, so she had such a dream, but she dreamed of the same person for a week in a row, which made her realize that something was wrong. Moreover, she would forget the contents of her dreams after waking up from them before, but since she started dreaming about this handsome man, she found that she could clearly recall what happened in her dreams, and those things seemed to have really happened, not like a dream at all. In her dream, she went shopping with that handsome man, drank coffee together, and ate together, and finally, the two became lovers. Kinyemo never thought that she would fall in love with someone else in her dreams. At the beginning, she felt very novel because of this man. All her dreams could be connected. She slept and dreamed every day, as if she had gone to another world and started a new life. In addition, the man was very handsome, and she also knew that it was just her dream, and there was nothing to worry about, so she did not resist it. Until the man had sex with her in her dream. At that time, she knew that the guy who had been in love with her in her dreams was actually the Yunmen grass. She never thought that she would be fucked by a grass. Although it was a dream, and not a real thing, it was still a very explosive thing for Kinyemo. After all, when she woke up that morning, she not only changed her underwear, but also changed her pajamas, sheets, and mattress. After Yunmen Ko revealed her identity, Kinyemo was a little bit unacceptable in her heart. After that, when she went to bed and dreamed again at night, she said that she didn't want to have such a dream again, and hoped that Yunmen Ko could make her return to normal and not disturb her again in the future. But it was not until this time that Kinyemo realized that Yunmen Ko's mind was like a child, not mature at all. When she heard Kinyemo asking it not to disturb her again in the future, she even got angry, and then she willfully controlled Kinyemo's dream to let the other party continue to fall in love with her. Since then, Kinyemo will definitely dream whenever she sleeps, and her dreams will be controlled by Yunmen Ko, forcing her to fall in love with Yunmen Ko, and almost every night, she will do that kind of thing with Yunmen Ko in her dreams. Yunmen grass's intelligence was not high to begin with. After tasting the sweetness of that kind of thing, it was even more unrestrained. It seemed to like this kind of thing, and sometimes even didn't want Kinyemo to wake up from the dream. Although the things that happened in the dream were all illusory, it could be said that it was an illusion created by Yunmen grass, but people would also have physiological reactions when they did that kind of thing in their dreams. Kinyemo had to change the sheets every morning when she woke up, which made her miserable. For this reason, she tried to get rid of Yunmen grass, but as long as she left Yunmen grass, she couldn't fall asleep. In order to ensure sleep and not have a mental breakdown, she could only endure Yunmen grass controlling her dreams. Now, as Yunmen grass became less and less restrained, Kinyemo could ensure sleep, but she was still very tired when she woke up every day, and she had no interest in doing anything, and eventually became what Lu Chuan saw now. After listening to Kinyemo's story, Lu Chuan showed an expression of amazement on his face. Even though he was a practitioner and had seen a lot, it was the first time he had seen such an outrageous thing. Nangang Duodo joked, "Actually, if you ask me, there's nothing wrong with this. At least that grass is a handsome guy in your dream, and it can control dreams at will, so whatever you want can be realized immediately. If you look at it from this perspective, many people will envy you." Kinyamo rolled his eyes at Nangang Duodo and said, "Then I can't spend my whole life with a grass, and who can stand having erotic dreams every day? If I couldn't sleep without this grass, I must give it to you and let you taste what that feels like." Lu Chuan smiled and said, "So you just need to solve the problem of your inability to fall asleep, and you can resolve your current troubles, right?" Kinyamo nodded and said, "The best solution is to solve the problem of my inability to fall asleep, but my nerve injury is permanent and cannot be reversed. Even the world's top neurologists are helpless. If it weren't for this, I wouldn't have tried to find someone with extraordinary power to help me solve my problems." Lu Chuan smiled and said, "Others are helpless, but that doesn't mean I have no way. Let me see what's going on with your injured nerve." After that, he stood up, walked to Kinyamo, stretched out his hand, and placed it on her head, releasing his consciousness to observe the situation in her brain. Soon, he found the nerve that Kinyamo was injured in. For modern medicine, this degree of injury is indeed irreversible. But for him as a practitioner, it is relatively easy to repair this nerve. Of course, this requires the help of some herbs. "I can repair Miss Kin's nerve injury," Lu Chuan said lightly. Kinyamo's face was filled with excitement when she heard this, and she almost cried. "Really? If you can really repair the trauma on my nerves and let me no longer be troubled by insomnia in the future, no matter what conditions you put forward, I will agree." Lu Chuan smiled and said, "Miss Kin just needs to hand over the Yunmen grass to me at that time. But to repair your nerves, you need a herb called Gyuan grass. This herb is not uncommon, but this is not China. I don't know where to find Gyuan grass. I wonder if you have heard of this herb." Kinyamo and Nangang Duodo both shook their heads. Lu Chuan thought about it and used his spiritual power to manifest the appearance of Gyuan grass on his palm. "This is the herb. Have you seen it?" Kinyamo shook his head, indicating that he had not seen it. Nangang Duodo fell into deep thought and then said, "I seem to have seen this kind of grass in Central Park." Lu Chuan's eyes lit up and said, "Where is that Central Park? I'll go and look for it tonight." At the same time, in a hotel, Yu Jiao and Bei Hu were packing up. This time they captured Chen Yilong and the three superpowers, which was a great achievement. Now they were planning to return to the headquarters. At this time, Yu Jiao's mobile phone suddenly received a message. She picked it up and took a look and immediately frowned. Seeing this, Bei Hu asked, "Master, what's wrong?" Yu Jiao said, "There has been another incident of superpowers injuring people near New York City's Central Park. The higher-ups asked us to investigate." Bei Hu showed a surprised expression on his face and said, "Haven't we already captured the three superpowers? How come there are still superpowers injuring people?" Yu Jiao shook her head and said, "Maybe the number of superpowers is far more than we know. In that case, let's go to Central Park to investigate tonight." Chapter 500, Falling into a Trap. Night falls. Central Park is very lively during the day, but at night, it becomes very deserted. It's not because people in New York don't like to go out at night, but because the United States is a free country. At night, there will be a lot of robberies, gang fights, indecent sexual assaults and other incidents in Central Park. It is extremely dangerous, so few people come here to play at night. Of course, even so, there are still many people who come here at night. Some are seeking excitement, some are homeless, and some are drunk, both men and women, and the reasons for appearing here are different. Yu Jiao and Bei Hu appeared under a tree and carefully observed the situation around them. "Master, the people here are all homeless and drunkards. Where can we find the whereabouts of the superpowers?" Bei Hu asked. Yu Jiao said, "According to the information given by the higher-ups, most of the superpowers here harm young and beautiful women. We just need to find their targets and we can follow the clues to find their location." Bei Hu nodded, and then his eyes fell on a blonde woman with a hot body, revealing clothes, but a drunken face, and a little unsteady walking. He quickly said, "Master, there is a drunk woman over there." Yujiro looked in the direction of Beihu's finger, and after a little thought, she said, "Follow her." The two quietly followed the drunk woman. The drunk woman seemed to be lost, and stumbled all the way to the depths of Central Park. There was no one to be seen here, and even the street lights were broken, making the light here dimmer than elsewhere. At this time, two men suddenly jumped out of the shadows not far away, one black and one white, and blocked the drunk woman's way with a wretched face. "Girl, you came to this place alone, so late at night. Are you here to seek excitement? If you want to play, I'll accompany you. I know a lot of tricks. I promise to make you feel so good that you will see God," the black man said with a sly smile. The two of them surrounded the drunk woman. The drunk woman was immediately frightened when she saw this. She hugged her chest with her hands to block her body and staggered back, shouting, You don't come over." The white man showed a wicked smile on his face. He flashed and was behind the woman. He put his arm around her shoulders and said, "Don't be afraid. We are all very gentle. As long as you are as obedient as a bitch, we promise that we will not let you get hurt." His speed was very fast. He was behind the drunk woman from his previous position in almost a blink of an eye. In the eyes of ordinary people, it was no different from teleportation. Yujiro, who was hiding in the distance and secretly observing all this, saw the speed of the white man and instantly determined that these two guys were the superpowers she was looking for. Moreover, she could see that the white man did not master the skill of teleportation, but was just very fast, so fast that it was difficult for ordinary people to catch it with their naked eyes. The black man also walked up to the drunk woman, stretched out his hand, and tore off her upper body clothes, and said with a smile, "There are not many people here, let's do it here, it's more exciting in the wild." The woman kept resisting and screaming, but it was of no avail. Yujiro looked at this scene, snorted coldly, and immediately rushed over there. She released two forces, and attacked the black man and the white man respectively. Seeing this, the two people narrowed their eyes, then quickly let go of the drunk woman, and retreated to the side. Yujiro protected the drunk woman behind her, glared at the two superpowers, and shouted, "The law enforcers are here. You illegally hurt innocent women. I advise you to confess your crimes immediately, otherwise don't blame me for being rude." The two superpowers looked at Yujiro, and sneered on their faces. The black man said, "The law enforcers are just a bunch of shit. Do you think you can arrest us?" After saying that, a powerful aura suddenly burst out from his body. The muscles on his arms were knotted, as if he was full of power that could destroy the world. Obviously, he was also a supernatural being who was good at strength. Yujiro snorted coldly and immediately planned to compete with the two guys. At this time, Beihu suddenly rushed over and shouted, "Master, be careful behind you." Yujiro frowned, turned around and looked behind her, and found that the drunk woman had a sinister smile on her face. A spike made of ice appeared on her palm, and stabbed at Yujiro without hesitation. Because the incident happened suddenly, Yujiro had no defense at all, and there was no time to stop it. She watched the spike pierce into her body. Endless coldness instantly eroded her body. She gritted her teeth and slapped the drunk woman with one palm, then quickly retreated to the back, and came to Beihu's side. The drunk woman was hit by Yujiro's palm, and her face became a little ugly. She immediately condensed several ice cones, and flew towards Yujiro. Seeing this, Beihu quickly blocked these ice cones for Yujiro. The master and apprentice realized at this time that they had fallen into a trap. The drunk woman was also a superpower. She disguised herself as a drunk woman, probably to lure the master and apprentice into the trap. Yujiro was injured, and her momentum suddenly weakened. Her face turned pale. She gritted her teeth, and looked at the three superpowers opposite, shouting, "Who are you? You set a trap here. Are you waiting for me, the master and apprentice, to take the bait?" At this time, a sneer sounded. Three people walked out of the woods. The one walking in front was Chen Zhenqian, the head of the Chen family. Behind him were two burly white men. You don't need to look to know that these two must be superpowers. You guessed right. This trap was prepared for you and your disciple. I thought you weren't so stupid, but I didn't expect you to fall into the trap so easily. It seems that you law enforcers are just like that, Chen Zhenqian said with a smile. Yujiro looked at Chen Zhenqian, and was surprised after recognizing his identity. Chen Zhenqian, as the head of the Chen family, don't you know what kind of crime it is to attack the law enforcers? Chen Zhenqian sneered and said, of course I know, but you took my son away and caused me to lose 3 superpower generals. If I'll let you go so easily, wouldn't it make me look too easy to bully? And you can rest assured that you will fall into my hands today, and your law enforcer headquarters will not get any news. I will turn you two into my slaves completely, so that you will have no other thoughts in your mind, except being ravaged by me, so you don't have to worry about me at all. You should worry about your own situation first. After saying that, he laughed. At the same time, on the other side of Central Park, Lu Chuan reached out and picked up several strange shaped grasses growing in the corner. This was the Gyuan grass he was looking for. These few Gyuan grasses should be enough to repair Miskin's damaged nerves. Then I can get the Yunmen grass and refine it into a pulse protecting pill, so as to try to devour the 9 heavens mysterious fire. After putting the Gyuan grass into the demon suppressing tower, Lu Chuan turned around and left. At this moment, he suddenly felt several strange auras appearing not far away, as if someone was fighting. So he released his spiritual consciousness and enveloped the entire Central Park. When he saw what was happening over there, he frowned. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.